Story 1.
My mother-in-law called 911 on me for putting my baby on his stomach. The pediatrician told me to do it. She told me it was violence. So here's the situation. My mother-in-law moved in for 3 months to help with our newborn, and it was mostly fine until she decided that doctor-recommended tummy time was child abuse. She physically snatched my son out of my hands, called the cops when I wouldn't give him back, and threatened CPS, all while the actual abuser and her family, her own husband, sat comfortably on the other side of the country, pulling strings. The police showed up, found a happy baby in a clean house, and basically told her they were there for her therapy session. I'm a guy in my mid-30s. My wife is Sarah. Her mother is Dolores. Her father is Victor, the man who actually beat his kids for years while Dolores watched. And then there's Marco, Sarah's younger brother, who's honestly just as fed up with all of this as we are. Let me back up. When Sarah first told me her mother wanted to come stay with us for 3 months after the baby arrived, I said yes, immediately. That's what I do. I say yes. I say yes to overtime, yes to hosting holidays, yes to lending money I don't have. Sarah once told me my spine was made of marshmallow, and she meant it with love, but she also meant it. Dolores flew in from the other side of the country 2 weeks before our son was born. She arrived with 3 oversized suitcases, a carry-on stuffed with baby blankets she crocheted herself, and a list of opinions about our house that she started sharing before her shoes were off. The cat shouldn't be in the nursery. The white noise machine would damage the baby's hearing. The pediatrician we'd chosen was too young. I smiled at all of it. Sarah squeezed my hand under the dinner table and mouthed times, "Thank you, asterisk." And honestly, the first 2.5 months were fine. Better than fine. Dolores cooked. She cleaned. She held the baby for hours so Sarah and I could sleep. She sang to him in Spanish, these low lullabies that made his whole body go slack. I'd come downstairs at 2 a.m. and find her rocking him in the dark, whispering to him like he was the most important person who had ever existed, and I'd think times, this is why we said yes. Asterisk. There were small things. She'd make comments about the pediatrician times. Are you sure she knows what she's doing? She looks like she just graduated times, and I'd explain that, doctor. Fam had been practicing for 12 years and came highly recommended. Dolores would nod, like she was humoring me. She unplugged the white noise machine twice. She rearranged the nursery without asking. Small things. I filed them away and kept smiling. Then came tummy time. Our son was 3 months old. Dr. Pham had been recommending supervised tummy time since his 1-month checkup. Standard stuff, 5 minutes here and there, builds neck strength, prevents flat spots. I'd been doing it daily. The baby hated it, obviously. He'd fuss and grunt and turn red and sometimes cry, and I'd talk to him the whole time, my face right down on the mat with his narrating his struggle like a sports commentator. Asterisk. And he lifts the head, ladies and gentlemen, and we have liftoff. Oh, and he's back down. Devastating. Asterisk. Dolores had seen me do this dozens of times. She never said a word about it. Not once. Until that Tuesday. I was on the living room floor with the baby on his playmat, maybe 3 minutes into tummy time. He was fussing, not crying, fussing, the low-grade grumbling that meant he was working hard and didn't love it. I had my hand on his back. Dolores walked in from the kitchen. She didn't say anything at first. She just stood there. I felt her watching and looked up, and the expression on her face stopped me cold. Her jaw was set. Her hands were balled at her sides. She was looking at my hand on the baby's back like it was a weapon. Dolores, he's fine. This is just tummy. She crossed the room in 3 steps, bent down and scooped him off the mat, not gently. She grabbed him under the arms and pulled him to her chest and turned her back to me in one motion like she was shielding him from an explosion. "You are hurting him," she said. Her voice was shaking. "This is violence. You are committing violence against this baby." I stayed on the floor. My knees were still on the mat. I remember looking at the little drool spot where his face had been and thinking, times, did that just happen? Asterisk. Dolores. I stood up slowly. The pediatrician. I don't care what she said. I have eyes. He was suffering. I took a breath. I let it go. I told myself she was tired, that she was from a different generation, that she loved him and was scared. I explained tummy time again, calmly, like I was reading from a pamphlet. She wouldn't look at me. She held the baby tighter and walked to the guest room and shut the door. I let it go. I actually let it go. The next afternoon, Sarah was at work. The baby was in his bassinet in our bedroom doing what babies do, squirming, fussing, making those little congested grunts, because his nose was stuffy. No tummy time. He was on his back. I was sitting on the bed next to him, scrolling through my phone, waiting for him to settle. I heard footsteps in the hallway. Fast ones. The door swung open and Dolores was there, eyes wide, already reaching. Give me the baby. He's fine, Dolores. He's just fussy. Give me the baby times now, asterisk. The word came out of my mouth before I could soften it. Just times, no asterisk. Flat. Final. Maybe the first real no I'd said to anyone in years. She stared at me. I stared back. Then I stood up, walked to the bedroom door, and closed it. I turned the lock. For about 10 seconds, nothing. Then I heard her pick up the phone in the hallway. I need the police. My son-in-law is hurting the baby. He locked himself in a room with the baby and won't let me in. The police arrived in 11 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the nightstand the entire time, holding my son against my chest, listening to Dolores pace the hallway and mutter in Spanish. 11 minutes of wondering if this was actually my life. 2 officers. One tall, one short, both polite. They asked to see the baby. I brought him out. He was asleep. He'd fallen asleep on my chest approximately 40 seconds after Dolores made the call, because that's what babies do. When you hold them and stay calm, they stop caring about whatever was bothering them and they sleep. The tall officer looked at the baby. Looked at me. Looked around the house, clean dishes in the rack, laundry folded on the couch, cat asleep on the windowsill, the little playmat still spread out on the living room floor with its cheerful giraffe pattern. Sir, the baby looks fine. He is fine. Dolores started talking. She told them about the tummy time. She told them about the nasal aspirator I used when his nose was stuffy. The snot sucker, she called it. And how it was cruel. She told them the cat hair was a respiratory hazard. She told them the white noise machine was damaging his eardrums. She told them I had locked her out of the room, which was true, and that the baby had been screaming, which was not. The short officer was writing in his notepad. I watched his pen stop moving about halfway through Dolores's monologue. He looked at his partner. His partner looked at the ceiling. Ma'am, the tall one said, it sounds like you're describing standard infant care. I am describing a pattern. Okay. He turned to me. Sir, does the baby see a pediatrician regularly? Every scheduled visit. I can show you the records. That won't be necessary. He closed his notepad. Look, we're required to respond to every call. But what I'm seeing here is a healthy baby in a clean home with a parent who seems to be doing just fine. He paused. This feels more like a venting session. The short officer actually snorted. Dolores drew herself up to her full 5'2". I will call CPS. That is your right, ma'am. They left. Dolores stood in the kitchen doorway with her arms crossed, vibrating with something I couldn't name. I called Sarah. Sarah was home in 20 minutes. I've never seen her drive that fast. She came through the front door, still in her work badge, keys in her fist, and she looked at her mother with an expression I'd never seen on her face before, not anger exactly, but a door closing. A lock turning. Get out. Sarah times Mija times you don't understand. Get out of my house. He was hurting. He was doing times tummy time times mom. You called the times police times on my husband for doing times tummy time asterisk. If you had seen his face, the baby's face. I've seen it. I've seen it 100 times. It's what babies look like. Get your things. Dolores packed. It took 40 minutes. I sat on the couch and held the baby and stared at the wall. Sarah stood in the hallway like a sentry, arms folded, watching her mother zip each suitcase. Nobody spoke. I drove Dolores to a motel. I don't know why I was the one who drove her. People pleaser, autopilot. Sarah didn't offer, and Dolores didn't ask for her. The car ride was 14 minutes of silence, and the sound of Dolores breathing through her nose. The next morning, I drove her to the airport. Halfway there, sitting at a red light, I said it. Are you going to apologize? She looked out the window. To who? To me. To Sarah. To the police officers you wasted the time of. If you had explained the tummy time better, I would have understood. You never explained it properly. I had explained it 4 times. I had shown her the pamphlet from Dr. Pham's office. I had pulled up the AAP guidelines on my phone. She had watched me do it for times weeks, asterisk. You're never going to see your grandchild again. My voice cracked on times, grandchild asterisk. I was shaking. My hands on the steering wheel were white. I told her she is not welcome in our house. I said, though, I was speaking to myself more than to her. If I see her anywhere near our house, I'm calling the police for trespassing. Then I said it. The thing I kind of regret. You're a bad person, Dolores. She had tears in her eyes. I pulled up to the departures curb and got out and hauled her suitcases onto the sidewalk, fast shaking, wanting to be done. I got back in the car and pulled away. A tap on the glass. I nearly kept driving. But I stopped, and there she was, pointing at the back seat. 1 bag. I'd missed 1 bag. I popped the door and she reached in and I said it again. You will never see your grandchild again. And she pulled the bag out and I drove away. She's presumably back with Victor on the other side of the country now. I really can't say I felt better. The rest of that day I felt just sad in general, and I couldn't figure out why. I hadn't felt like cooking, even though I cook most days. Sarah ordered Thai food and we ate it on the couch in silence while the baby slept between us. 4 months later, Marco got married overseas. Sarah wanted to go. Marco was the sibling who'd taken the worst of Victor's abuse, broken arm at 9, bruises he learned to hide by middle school, and he'd clawed his way out and built a life on another continent and found someone who loved him. And Sarah wasn't going to miss it. So we went. Dolores was there. Of course she was. She approached Sarah on the second day at the rehearsal dinner while I held the baby across the room and watched. Sarah had sent her a letter months earlier, a detailed specific list of what accountability would look like. Acknowledge what you did. Acknowledge times why, times you did it. Get help. I'm sorry for what happened in those days, Dolores said. I felt very tired. Sarah waited. When I was a girl, Dolores continued, my cousin used to hold me down, and I couldn't move, and I think when I saw the baby on his stomach, Mom, it wasn't your cousin. It was Dad. Dolores' mouth opened, closed. She picked up her wine glass and walked away. She never mentioned Victor. Not once. Not the years of bruises, not the silence she kept, not the children she didn't protect. She found a cousin from 40 years ago to blame, and she walked away with her wine. We blocked them both, Dolores and Victor, on everything. Phone, email, social media. All of it. 3 weeks after the wedding, Marco called. Dolores and Victor, who had told Marco they couldn't afford to contribute to his wedding, had posted photos from a European vacation, Portugal, Spain, smiling on a terrace somewhere with sangria. Marco hasn't spoken to them since. My son is 7 months old now. He has one set of grandparents' mind. My parents come over every Sunday. My dad, who has never raised a hand to anyone in his life, picks up the baby and bounces him and makes airplane noises. Last week, the baby dropped a toy, and my dad gasped and said, "Oh my God, times, child abuse times." And Sarah laughed so hard she choked on her coffee. That's the only version of that phrase I ever want to hear in my house again.
Story 2.
My family spent years telling me I was nothing, the homeless loser, the embarrassment nobody wanted at Thanksgiving. Funny how that works, because now every single one of them needs something from the house they tried to steal from me. So here's what happened. My golden child brother's scheming wife orchestrated a campaign to literally take my home, got publicly humiliated at Christmas, then got arrested for assault after a DNA test revealed she'd been sleeping with some bronze-tongued lout the entire marriage. And somehow she showed up at my doorstep blaming ME for ruining her life, all caught on camera. I'm a guy in my early 30s just trying to live in peace. My brother Dan married Vanessa, a woman whose entire personality was extracting resources from other people. My mom Lorraine is the classic keep the peace at any cost type. And my dad, Gerald, he's the silent patriarch who enabled all of it for decades. This is how it all finally came crashing down. After the Christmas party blow-up, I did something I should have done years ago. I stopped waiting for the next shoe to drop and started nailing shoes to the floor. First thing January, I installed cameras. Ring doorbell on the front, 2 Wise cams covering the driveway and back porch, and a blink system inside the garage. Cost me maybe $400 total. Best money I ever spent, though I didn't know that yet. Second thing, I rented out the 2 spare bedrooms. My buddy Marcus from the warehouse took one. A guy named Theo, who I'd known since community college, took the other. $300 a month each, utilities included. Not a fortune, but it covered the property taxes and then some. For the first time in my adult life, I had a financial cushion that wasn't made of anxiety. Third thing, I changed the locks. Again, the house was mine. Fully mine. I had the deed, the mortgage was current, and every legal challenge Vanessa had tried to mount during her campaign to steal it had been swatted down like a mosquito at a barbecue. But owning something and feeling safe in it are 2 different animals. I was learning to close the gap. Of course, peace was a language my family had never learned to speak. Lorraine called on a Tuesday evening, I remember, because I was making chili, and Marcus was arguing with Theo about whether cornbread needed sugar. "Sweetheart," she started, and I could already hear the script loading behind her eyes. "I was just thinking Dan and the boys are still in that tiny apartment, and you got those extra rooms, and it just seems like those rooms should have gone to family. To Dan's family. Those boys need space. And you're renting to strangers when your own nephews." Marcus and Theo aren't strangers. They're my friends. They pay rent. They help maintain the property. But times Dan's children, asterisk. Dan's children have a father who can figure out their living situation. Like I figured out mine when I was sleeping in my car and nobody in this family answered the phone. Silence. The kind that has weight. "That's not fair," she whispered. "No," I said. "It wasn't." I hung up. The chili came out great. For a few months, things were almost quiet. Vanessa was living with her parents, and from what filtered back through Lorraine's guilt-laced updates, it wasn't going well. She was forced to work in their family business, some kind of commercial cleaning outfit, because Dan had cut off access to his bank accounts entirely. She'd already maxed out every credit card he'd previously given her. She griped constantly about having to work for her parents despite having a college degree, but honestly, they were probably the only ones who'd employ her. She had a criminal record now courtesy of the Christmas incident and a decade-long gap in her resume that screamed, "I married someone and made extracting his resources my full-time career." I'd heard from Dan that her parents were severely disappointed in her as well, but that was just a rumor. They could be just as bad as her for all I know. Either way, the crap show of a divorce was grinding forward at the speed of bureaucracy, and I was content to watch from a distance. Then Dan started paying attention. He told me later, it was a Sunday morning. He had the boys for the weekend, his eldest who was 7, and the baby who was nearly 2. He was spooning oatmeal into the toddler's mouth when the morning light hit the kid's hair at a certain angle. Lighter than Dan's. Lighter than anyone's in our family. Curly in a way that didn't trace back to any branch of the family tree he could identify. He said the spoon just stopped midair. Dan was never the sharpest, but he wasn't stupid. Blinded, maybe. Vanessa had kept him in a fog for years, a carefully maintained atmosphere of guilt, obligation, and just enough affection to keep him compliant. But the fog was lifting, and what he saw underneath made his hands shake. He didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, he did something methodical and completely unlike the Dan I'd grown up with. He ordered a DNA test kit, then another from a different company because he wanted to be sure. He pulled phone records. He cross-referenced bank statements, cash withdrawals that didn't correspond to any household expense, hotel charges, in towns where neither of them had business. And the texts. God, the texts. Vanessa had been sloppy, or maybe she just never imagined Dan would look. Messages to a man Dan eventually identified as a smooth-talking regional sales rep in his early 40s. The kind of guy who wore too much cologne and called every woman gorgeous. The bronze-tongued lout, as I'd later come to think of him. He was nowhere near hot enough to be a trophy wife's secret lover, which somehow made it worse. Vanessa had risked everything, her marriage, her children's stability, her meal ticket, for times that asterisk. Both DNA tests came back the same. The baby wasn't Dan's. Dan drove to our parents' house on a Saturday afternoon. He walked in with a manila folder thick enough to choke on. Gerald was in his recliner. Lorraine was watering her African violets. He set the folder on the kitchen table, opened it, and said, "I need you both to see this before I do what I'm about to do." Lorraine read the first page and sat down so hard she missed the chair. What happened next? The confrontation with Vanessa, the violence, the arrest, and the night. She showed up at my door screaming that I destroyed her life. That's where everything detonated. And every second of it was caught on camera. Dan confronted Vanessa the following Tuesday. He did it at our parents' house, which in retrospect was either brave or insane. He'd called her under the pretense of discussing custody scheduling. She arrived 20 minutes late, wearing sunglasses indoors, already irritated that she'd had to drive across town. Dan was sitting at the kitchen table with the folder still open. Gerald stood near the doorway. Lorraine was in the kitchen gripping a dish towel like a rosary. From what Dan and Gerald both told me separately, unprompted matching in every detail, Vanessa's face went through about 6 expressions in 2 seconds when she saw the DNA results. Confusion, recognition, calculation, and then rage. She didn't deny it. That's the part that still gets me. She didn't even try. She went straight to justification. "You were never enough," she said. "You were never going to be enough." Then she lunged. She scratched Dan across the neck hard enough to draw blood. When Gerald stepped in to separate them, she caught him across the cheek. And when her eldest, 7 years old, standing in the hallway because nobody had thought to keep him away, started crying and grabbed at her leg, she shoved him so hard he hit the door frame and came away with a black eye that would take 2 weeks to fade. Lorraine called the police. For once in her life, she didn't hesitate. Vanessa was arrested in my parents' driveway, screaming that Dan had set her up, that the tests were fake, that this was all a conspiracy orchestrated by me, the brother-in-law she'd spent years dismissing as worthless. The officers were patient. The handcuffs were not. Her parents bailed her out within 6 hours. 4 hours after that, she was on my porch. I was in the kitchen cleaning up after dinner when the Ring doorbell lit up my phone. I saw her face in the fisheye lens, mascara-streaked hair, wild jaw, set in that particular way that meant she'd rehearsed whatever she was about to say, but would abandon the script within 10 seconds. I opened the door, but stayed behind the threshold. "You did this," she said. Her voice was hoarse. "You poisoned Dan against me. You poisoned this whole family against me because you couldn't stand that I had what you never... Vanessa, you need to leave. Never could keep. A family. A marriage. A life that actually meant something. And now you sit in this house that should have been times ours, times renting rooms to your loser friends while my children... Your children. Right. All of them yours." She shoved me, both hands flat against my chest. I stepped back but didn't fall. She came forward, finger jabbing, voice climbing octaves. "You're nothing. You were nothing when you were homeless, and you're nothing now. This house doesn't change what you are." I said nothing. I just looked at the camera, then back at her. She followed my gaze. Saw the Ring doorbell. Saw the red recording light. She left. Peeled out of my driveway so fast she clipped my mailbox. I filed the police report the next morning. The restraining order came through by Thursday. Every frame of footage, the porch confrontation, the driveway departure, the mailbox assassination, went straight to Dan's divorce attorney. The divorce proceedings in our state are at fault. Vanessa's attorney tried to paint her as a devoted mother, driven to one mistake by emotional neglect. Dan's attorney played the footage. All of it. The Christmas party, the porch, the bank statements. The text with the bronze-tongued lout who was subpoenaed and showed up looking like a man who just realized the bill had arrived for a meal he'd eaten years ago. His testimony was hollow. He tried to minimize. "It was casual," he said. "She told me the marriage was over." The judge was unmoved. No alimony, partial custody, that Vanessa would barely exercise. She'd later cancel visits with increasing frequency, citing work, citing exhaustion, citing anything but the truth, which was that motherhood without an audience held no appeal for. To her. Dan got his name removed from the baby's birth certificate. The bronze-tongued lout who'd wanted the affair but emphatically not the consequences was saddled with child support obligations he lamented publicly on social media, which was exactly the caliber of man he'd always been. Vanessa ended up right back where she started working in her parents' cleaning business, living in their spare bedroom, posting cryptic quotes about loyalty on Instagram. Dan showed up at my house on a Friday night 3 days after the divorce was finalized. He was drunk. Not sloppy, just enough to make the drive over, which he shouldn't have done. He had scratches on his arms from moving furniture out of the apartment. Vanessa had trashed before surrendering the keys. I didn't invite him inside the house. I walked him to the camper in the backyard, poured 2 whiskeys, and shuffled a deck of Uno cards. We didn't talk for the first 20 minutes, just played. He drew 4. I stacked. He swore. Normal brother stuff, except we hadn't done normal brother stuff in 15 years. Then he said I should have answered the phone. I didn't look up from my cards. Yeah. When you were in your car. When you were, I knew. I knew, and I let Vanessa convince me it wasn't my problem. She didn't have to try very hard, Dan. His jaw worked. He set his cards down. No. She didn't. We finished the game. I won. He asked if he could sleep in the camper. I brought him a blanket and locked the house behind me. The next week I loaned him the camper. Not for him, for his eldest, who'd been sharing a bedroom with his father in that cramped apartment. A 7-year-old deserves his own space. I wasn't doing it for Dan. I was doing it for a kid who'd gotten a black eye from his own mother and still asked about her every day. Gerald and Lorraine showed up together on a Sunday. They'd seen the animated Reddit videos. Someone had turned the whole saga into a series, complete with cartoon versions of our family that were somehow both hilarious and devastating. Lorraine cried through most of the visit. Gerald sat rigid in my living room chair, hands on hid knees, and said more words in one sitting than I'd heard from him in a decade. They'd started attending church. They'd enrolled in couples counseling. And for the first time in my life, I heard my father use the word narcissist, not about Vanessa, but about himself. We made you disposable, he said. We made you the one who could be lost. And when we almost lost you, we blamed you for falling. I didn't forgive them. Not that day. Maybe not ever fully. But I believed them, and that was new. They asked about family therapy. I declined. But I let them come to Sunday dinners. I let them watch me be an uncle present, steady, the kind of adult those kids had never had consistent access to. Dan's eldest started calling me Uncle Cam and showing me his drawings. The kid drew houses constantly. Big ones with lots of rooms. The house remained mine. Marcus and Theo still paid rent. The camera still recorded. The lock stayed changed. My family was not healed. We were not some redemption arc wrapped in a bow. But for the first time in 30-some years, we were honest. And honest, I was learning, was a foundation you could actually build on. Even if you had to pour it yourself.
Story 3.
I spent 10 years fighting for a marriage that never actually existed. Let me explain what I mean by that. I married my wife thinking we were building something real. Turns out she never loved me, married me because her mother pressured her into it, and when I finally got vulnerable enough to share my deepest secrets, she used them as a permission slip to cheat. The kicker, when I finally stopped begging and started healing, suddenly she wanted me back. I'm 32 male. My wife is Renee, 31. Her mother, Lorraine, is a devout Jehovah's Witness, who basically orchestrated our entire marriage. There's a guy I never saw coming, who I'll get to later. And then there's Mia, the woman who finally showed me what it feels like when someone actually loves you back. But I need to start from the beginning, because this thing unraveled slowly. When I was 8 years old, someone I trusted did something to me that I didn't have words for until I was 30. I carried it like a stone in my chest, this dense, hot thing I could feel pressing against my ribs. Every time someone got too close. Every time intimacy required me to be fully present. I never told anyone. Not my parents. Not my friends. Not Renee. Instead, I built a version of myself that looked functional. I was the guy who worked hard, who showed up, who said the right things. And when I met Renee at 21 through her family's congregation, Lorraine's congregation, I thought I'd found the person I could finally be safe with. We dated for a year. Lorraine loved me. I was a good brother, she said. Responsible. Spiritual. Marriage material. Renee and I had chemistry, sure, but looking back I realized Lorraine was the engine behind everything. She'd call Renee after our dates and ask pointed questions. She'd remind her that good witness women didn't date casually. She'd quote scripture about the virtue of marrying young. Renee was 20 when we got engaged. 21 at the altar. I thought she was happy. Her smile looked real. Her vows sounded real. The first few years felt real enough that I stopped questioning. But there was always this distance, a thin pane of glass between us that I could feel but never name. I'd reach for her hand and she'd let me hold it, but she never reached first. I'd plan date nights and she'd attend them pleasant and present, but never electric. I told myself that's just what long-term love looked like. Comfortable. Steady. I told myself I was lucky. Here's the thing I hid from her. I used adult content. Not constantly, not compulsively, but regularly enough that it became a quiet habit I maintained behind closed doors. For a Jehovah's Witness marriage, this was nuclear. I knew that. So I lied about it. Small lies, casual deflections, a browser history wiped clean like it never happened. It wasn't the content itself that mattered, it was the lying. The pattern of concealment. I built a tiny room inside our marriage where I kept my shame and I locked the door. For 10 years, that door stayed shut. Then at 30, I started therapy. The childhood abuse came spilling out like water through a cracked dam, first a trickle during session 3, then a flood by session 7. My therapist helped me understand that the adult content used the secrecy, the inability to be fully vulnerable with Renee, it was all connected. Survival mechanisms I'd built as a kid that had calcified into adult habits. She told me healing required honesty. Total honesty. With everyone. So one night, I sat Renee down at our kitchen table and I told her everything. The abuse, the content, the lies. I was shaking so hard the table vibrated. I couldn't look at her face, so I stared at her hands instead, watched her fingers go white around her coffee mug. When I finished, the silence lasted so long, I thought she'd left the room. Then she spoke. I almost didn't marry you. My head snapped up. I was still in love with my ex, she said. The week before the wedding, I told my mom I wanted to call it off. She said I'd be disgracing Jehovah. She said I'd made a commitment, and good Christian women don't run from commitments. Renee's voice was flat. Clinical. Like she was reading someone else's story. So I walked down the aisle, and I tried. I really tried to love you the way you love me. Tried? That word landed in my stomach like a fist. Everything after that conversation moved in slow motion and double speed simultaneously. Renee said she needed space to process. I gave it to her. She enrolled in community college courses. I supported it. She started going out with classmates, bars, parties, club meetings that ran until midnight, then 1 a.m., then 2. I responded the only way I knew how. I became more helpful, more present. I cooked her favorite meals. I cleaned the apartment until it gleamed. I left notes on the bathroom mirror in her love language, words of affirmation, acts of service, every tool the marriage books recommended. I poured myself into a void and called it devotion. She stopped touching me entirely. No hugs. No kisses. She'd angle her body away on the couch like proximity to me was a chore. I'd ask if she wanted to watch a movie together, and she'd say she had studying to do, then I'd hear her laughing on the phone in the bedroom with the door closed. 3 months into this, I asked her directly, "Do you still love me?" She was standing at the kitchen counter scrolling her phone. She didn't look up. "I don't think I was ever times and times love with you," she said. "I love you as a person, but I don't think I've ever been in love with you." My knees buckled. I actually grabbed the counter to stay upright. I begged her for couples therapy. I printed out lists of counselors, highlighted the ones with sliding scale fees offered to handle all the scheduling. She said she'd think about it. A week passed. 2. I asked again. "I don't think therapy can fix what was never there," she said. I stopped sleeping. I'd lie in bed next to her, this woman I'd given a decade to, and listen to her breathe and wonder how I'd loved someone so completely who had never once felt the same way back. The glass pane I'd always sensed between us finally had a name times she was never mine. Asterisk. Then I found the messages on her phone. And everything I thought I knew about how much this could hurt turned out to be a warm-up. The messages were from a number saved under a coworker's name, but coworkers don't text each other at 1:47 a.m. about how they can still feel each other's skin. I read them standing in the bathroom with the door locked, my thumb scrolling while my vision tunneled. Explicit. Tender. The kind of intimate shorthand that only develops over weeks, maybe months. She'd been telling him things about me, about my therapy, my childhood, my issues. He'd responded with the exact right amount of performative sympathy. Asterisk, you deserve someone whole times, he'd written. She'd sent back a heart emoji. I confronted her that night. Didn't yell. Couldn't. My voice came out in this strange, airless whisper like someone had punctured my lungs. Who is he? It's not what you... Renee. Who is he? She told me. A guy from one of her college clubs. She said it had only gotten physical once. The messages said otherwise. She cried. She said she'd stop. I watched her face and tried to find the woman I'd married and couldn't locate her anywhere. She stopped for 11 days. I counted them like a man counting steps across a frozen lake listening for cracks. On day 12, I saw his name light up her phone screen while she was in the shower. She changed his contact name but used the same heart emoji next to it. When I confronted her again, she turned it on me. Maybe if you'd been more affectionate after everything came out. I told you I was times sexually abused as a child, times Renee. And I needed time to process that, and instead of giving me space, you smothered me in I. You were already talking to him before I told you anything. She went quiet. The math didn't work, and she knew it. The timeline of those messages predated my confession by at least 3 weeks. She'd started reaching for someone else while I was still rehearsing how to be honest with her. We separated under the same roof because neither of us could afford to leave. 6 months. 180-some days of passing each other in the hallway, like ghosts, occupying different dimensions of the same haunted house. She slept in the bedroom. I slept on the couch. She'd come home smelling like cologne that wasn't mine, and I'd lie there in the dark, cataloging the scent like evidence I'd never use. Darius. I never said his name out loud, but I learned it. He was in his 30s, recently divorced himself, and apparently ready to play house with someone else's wife. Renee started packing boxes. Casual at first, a few books, some clothes. Then the kitchen items she'd brought into the marriage. Then the photos off the walls, leaving pale rectangles on the paint like surgical scars. I'm getting my own place, she said. You're moving in with him. It's not a relationship. You're moving in with him, Renee. She didn't deny it a second time. During those 6 months, I came closer to not surviving than I'd been since childhood. There were nights I sat in my car in the parking garage with the engine running and no destination, just the low hum of the motor and the thought that it would be very easy to stop trying. My therapist adjusted my sessions to twice a week. She gave me a crisis number I kept in my wallet like a talisman. I used it once at 3 a.m. Sitting on the kitchen floor, unable to remember how to fill out the divorce paperwork I'd printed 6 times. The man who survived what happened at 8 years old almost didn't survive 32. But I did. Barely. Ugly. One breath at a time. Renee moved out on a Saturday. I didn't watch her load the truck. I sat in a coffee shop 3 blocks away and stared at a muffin I couldn't eat until my phone buzzed, times I left the keys on the counter. Asterisk. Over the next year, I rebuilt myself the way you rebuild a house after a flood, gutting everything down to the studs and deciding what's worth keeping. Therapy. Journaling. A gym membership I actually used. Slowly, carefully, I started to date a little and then found a great girl. Mia didn't fix me. She didn't need to. She just showed up consistently and spoke my love languages back to me like they were her native tongue. I was ultra transparent with my new girlfriend, told her everything, the abuse, the marriage, the wreckage. She held my hand through it and didn't flinch. Meanwhile, Renee dumped Darius within 3 months. Started her own therapy. Began recognizing the self-sabotage the way Lorraine's pressure had warped her into someone who made decisions out of fear and then punished everyone around her for the cage she'd built. She wanted to see me happy, but she was hurting. I had been talking about divorce for months and slowly worked on getting the papers filled out. I needed to take the final steps of filing, and I did it. I don't think Renee ever took me seriously, because now she was crying, wanting me back. Calling, texting. Showing up at my apartment with swollen eyes and apologies that sounded for the first time like they came from somewhere real. It's been so hard for me, because it actually seems remorseful, but it's too little too late. Some may think it's wrong or irrational, but I've held compassion for my ex. I know her problems and struggles, and just want to see her happy. I just couldn't get past her affair and how it hurt me so badly. When I look at her, all I see is him lurking around. I signed the papers on a Tuesday morning. Mia drove me. She waited in the car and didn't ask how it went. When I came out, just handed me a coffee and squeezed my knee. I'm rather proud of myself for being courageous enough to choose my own life. The 8-year-old boy who learned to be silent. The 21-year-old groom who mistook obligation for love. The 30-year-old man who cracked himself open hoping honesty would save his marriage. They all live in me. But they don't run me anymore. I do.
Story 4.
I paid for every single cent of my daughter's dream wedding. The flowers, the venue, the catering, all of it. And then I found out she hired security specifically to keep me from walking through the door. Let me back up. My daughter Ava spent her entire life punishing me for something her biological mother did. And when she finally got engaged, I thought writing that check would be the thing that healed us. Instead, she took my money, planned the wedding of her dreams, and deliberately cut me and my wife out of it like we were strangers off the street. When I found out I did something that half of you will call justice and the other half will call unforgivable. So here's the cast. I'm a 57-year-old father who's been through the ringer. My wife is Mercy, 45, the most patient woman God ever put on this earth. My daughter is Ava, 27, and her fiancé is Matt. To understand what happened at the wedding, you need to understand what happened when Ava was 7. Her biological mother, Diane, sat Ava on the living room couch one Tuesday afternoon, told her she was going on a trip and never came back. No phone call, no letter, nothing. She moved to France with a man she'd been seeing behind my back for over a year, and she left our daughter like you'd leave an old coat at a restaurant without a second thought. I found Ava still sitting on that couch at 9 o'clock that night, shoes on, backpack packed, waiting for Mommy to take her wherever Mommy was going. She never forgave me for not being the one who left. I know that doesn't make logical sense, but grief in a child doesn't follow logic. Ava decided somewhere deep in the wiring of her 7-year-old brain that I was the reason Diane disappeared, that if I had been better, more lovable, more something, her mother would have stayed. And every year that passed without Diane reaching out only calcified that belief into something harder than bone. By 12, Ava was stealing from my wallet. By 15, she was getting suspended for fights. By 17, she was deep in drugs. Things went so far that she had to be sent to rehab. She graduated from college at 25, 3 years late, and the next year she relapsed, and I had to admit her again for a few months. It wouldn't be rude if I call her a pain in the butt, because indeed she is. She has always troubled me, embarrassed me, and made my life miserable. Thank goodness I found such an understanding wife in Mercy. Had she been any other woman, she would have manipulated me to abandon Ava. But she was the one who always pacified me to be patient with Ava. I cannot thank her enough for all the support she had lent and all the sacrifices she had made for me and Ava. So Ava's problem was 2 things. First, I remarried, and second, I married Mercy. You see, Mercy is not a native-born American. Her family originally belonged to the Middle East, Iran specifically. She came here at 19 with nothing but a suitcase and an engineering degree she had to re-earn from scratch because nobody recognized it. She built herself from the ground up, kindest woman I've ever known. And Ava treated her like an invader from the day I introduced them. The slurs I won't repeat. The Thanksgiving she accidentally knocked Mercy's saffron rice onto the floor and said the house smelled like a refugee camp. The time she told Mercy to go back to her desert in front of my parents who sat there in stunned silence. Mercy absorbed all of it. Every single time she'd squeeze my hand afterward and say, "She's hurting. She doesn't mean it. Give her time." 15 years of time. Then Matt came along and something in Ava softened. Not toward us, toward life. She got clean, stayed clean, held a job. When Matt proposed, she called me. First voluntary phone call in 2 years. She said, "Dad, I want a real wedding." My hands were shaking when I hung up. I turned to Mercy and said, "I think this is it. I think she's coming back to us." Mercy smiled and said, "Then give her everything." So I did. I wrote a check for $114,000. The venue alone was $42,000, a vineyard estate outside Napa that Ava had pinned on her vision board since she was 20. I didn't flinch. I didn't negotiate. I handed over every cent because I believed, with the desperate faith of a man who'd been drowning for 2 decades, that this act of love would finally be enough. 3 weeks before the wedding, I called the planner to add my brother to the guest list. She hesitated. That hesitation, that half-second pause on the other end of the line, is the sound I will hear for the rest of my life. The list is actually at capacity, Mr. Herman. For one person, just squeeze in one chair. Another pause. I think you should speak with Ava about the guest list directly. Something cold moved through my chest. Send me the list. She didn't want to. I could hear her wrestling with it, but I was the one writing her checks and she knew it. The email arrived 11 minutes later. 218 names. I read every single one. Then I read them again. Then a third time, slowly, my finger tracing down the screen of my phone while Mercy watched me from across the kitchen, a dish towel going still in her hands. My name wasn't on it. Mercy's name wasn't on it. At the very bottom of the document, in a section labeled Venue Security Notes, was a line typed in bold, asterisk. Under no circumstances are the following individuals to be granted access to the property. My full name, Mercy's full name. If they attempt entry, security is to escort them off premises immediately. Do not engage. Do not explain. Asterisk. My daughter hadn't just forgotten to invite me. She had specifically, deliberately, in writing, hired people to physically stop me from attending the wedding I paid for. I drove to Ava's apartment. She opened the door in a bathrobe, saw my face, and didn't even flinch. You saw the list, she said. Not a question. Ava. My voice cracked. I could feel tears coming and I hated myself for it. I paid for everything. Everything. And you. And that's supposed to buy you a seat. She leaned against the doorframe. You owed me that money, Dad. You owed me a childhood. You owed me a mother. So yeah, I took it. And no, you're not coming. You or your wife. I'm your father. Well, good for you. I stood there with tears running into my collar, and my 27-year-old daughter looked at me like I was a stranger soliciting donations on her porch. Stop with the emotional drama, she said. This is exactly the negativity I didn't want at my wedding. She closed the door. I sat in my car for 45 minutes. When I finally drove home, Mercy took one look at me and didn't ask a single question. She just held me while I sobbed at the kitchen table like a child. Then she sat down across from me, folded her hands, and said something she had never said in 15 years of marriage. We have to do something. The next morning, I picked up the phone and called the vineyard. I canceled the vineyard with 3 sentences. Told the manager there'd been a change of plans, thanked him for his time, and asked him to process the refund to my card. He didn't ask questions. People who manage $42,000 venues learn early not to. I left everything else intact. The planner, the caterers, the florist, the string quartet. Every vendor Ava had handpicked with my money remained booked and confirmed. I didn't touch them because I didn't need to. A wedding without a venue is a parade without a street. All those beautiful arrangements would show up on the morning of, and they would have nowhere to go. Mercy watched me hang up the phone. She didn't celebrate. She didn't say good. She just nodded once slowly like a woman, acknowledging a surgery that needed to happen but would leave a scar. I blocked Ava's number. Changed the gate code to our property. Then I sat on the back porch with a glass of water and waited 11 days for the world to collapse. The wedding was scheduled for 10 in the morning. I know what happened next because Matt told me later, piece by piece, in a voice that sounded like a man recounting a car accident. The decorators arrived at the vineyard at 6 a.m. Gates locked. Manager on site told them the reservation had been canceled. They called the planner. The planner called Ava. Ava didn't believe it. She drove out there in her wedding dress, not fully zipped, veil, crooked mascara already running, and tried to argue her way past the front entrance. When the vineyard security told her the booking no longer existed, she shoved one of them. Actually put her hands on a man's chest and pushed. Matt said he had to physically wrap his arms around her and drag her backward before they called the police. She was screaming my name. Not Dad, my full name, like I was a defendant. They didn't get arrested. Matt got her into the car. She drove straight to my house, still in the dress, and punched the gate code. It didn't work. She punched it again. Again. Then she leaned on the intercom buzzer for 11 straight minutes. I know because I was sitting in my living room 30 feet from the speaker listening to every second. Mercy sat beside me, her hand on my knee, neither of us moving. Ava's voice through the intercom started furious and ended guttural animal. She called me things I won't write. She called Mercy things that would get you banned from any platform on the internet. Then the buzzing stopped, and through the window, I watched her car peel away from the curb, leaving tire marks on the asphalt like a wound. She drove to my parents' house next. My mother, 78 years old, arthritic, the woman who knitted Ava a blanket for every birthday until Ava told her to stop, opened the door and tried to hug her granddaughter. Ava screamed in her face. Told my father he'd raised a monster. Told my mother she was complicit. When my father quietly said, "Ava, your dad loves you. Maybe you should talk to him," she grabbed a potted plant from their porch and hurled it against the siding of their house. My mother called me that night crying. "How could you do this to her?" she said. "She's your daughter." "She banned me from my own gift, Mom." "She's still your daughter, and I'm still her father." That's the whole problem. 2 days later, my mother called again. Different tone entirely. Flat. Exhausted. "She came back," Mom said. "She told your father he should die. She told me I was never her real grandmother." Long pause. I understand now. I canceled Ava's credit card that week, the one I'd been quietly paying since she was 21. 6 years of groceries, gas, clothing, and whatever else she swiped, without ever once saying thank you. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. She locked me out of her biggest day, so I locked her out of the account that had been silently underwriting her life. Ava married Matt 3 weeks later in a friend's backyard. Folding chairs, grocery store cake. I heard about it secondhand. For 5 months, nothing. Silence so thick it had texture. Then Matt called me from a number I didn't recognize. His voice was thin, scraped raw. He said Ava had thrown a plate at his head during an argument about dishes, that she'd been volatile since the wedding, screaming, breaking things, disappearing for days. He said he loved her, but he was afraid of her, and the shame of admitting that to her father made him pause so long I thought the call had dropped. "I'm sorry," he said. "I saw the red flags. I thought love would be enough." "It never is with her," I said. Believe me, he asked me to help. Not financially, just help. Talk to her. Try. So I went. Alone, like he asked. Mercy stayed home. I sat in Ava's kitchen in an apartment that smelled like stale laundry and burnt coffee, and I told my daughter I would pay for therapy. Any therapist, any program, anywhere in the country. She stared at me with eyes that looked exactly like Diane's, and she said, "I want to kill your wife." Not metaphorically. She said it with the flat calm of someone reading a grocery list. "You disgust me," she continued. "I'm ashamed you're my father. I'm ashamed of what you married. I'm ashamed of everything you are." I absorbed it. Every word. Sat there and took it, like I've been taking it for 20 years. Because what else do you do when the person destroying you is someone you built with your own blood? I drove home. Mercy was waiting at the door. I told her everything. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "What about Nadia?" Nadia. Ava's best friend from high school. The only human being Ava had never turned on, now living in Cape Town. I hadn't thought of her in years. Mercy had. Of course Mercy had. The woman my daughter wanted dead was the only one still strategizing how to save her. It took Nadia 2 weeks of daily calls, but she convinced Ava to see a therapist. I don't know what she said. I don't need to know. It worked. 6 months into therapy, Ava called my parents. She apologized. Genuinely, my mother said with tears, with specifics, with accountability. My father cried so hard he had to hand the phone to my mother. Then Ava sent a message through my mother 4 times. "Tell him I will never forgive him, but tell him I'm sorry for Grandma and Grandpa." Asterisk. Never. That was the word she chose. I sat with it the way you sit with a diagnosis. Let it settle into the architecture of my chest. My daughter will never forgive me for refusing to pay for my own humiliation. And the person she truly can't forgive, Diane, the woman who walked out of a 7-year-old's life without turning around, is someone I cannot drag to any table, any therapy session, any reckoning. I am the father who stayed. And for that, I am the one who will never be forgiven. I wish her well. I do. From out here on the other side of every wall she's built, I wish my daughter everything good in this world. And every night I sit on that same back porch with a glass of water and I leave the gate code unchanged just in case.
Story 5.
She left me a note on the refrigerator. Not a conversation, not a phone call, a note. Stuck between a takeout menu and a grocery list, like ending our marriage was just another errand she needed to check off, before catching her flight to LA with a younger man. 6 years later, that same woman showed up at my office looking like a ghost, 2 kids on her hip begging me for money and whispering that I still loved her. She was wrong, but my compassion almost cost me everything I'd rebuilt. I'm a 41-year-old man. My ex-wife is Lisa, she's 35 now. The guy she left me for is Leo, her younger, flashier upgrade, who turned out to be her worst nightmare. My current wife is Sophie, the woman who saved me and almost had to watch Lisa tear it all apart a second time. When Lisa and I were married, she had a way of making me feel like I was always one step behind some invisible standard she carried in her head. I worked as a financial consultant. Steady income, good benefits, a house we owned outright by the time I was 33. But steady wasn't enough. She wanted spontaneity. She wanted someone who didn't plan vacations 3 months in advance or get excited about a new spreadsheet template. She wanted Leo. Leo was 23 when she met him at a friend's birthday party. Tattoo Sleeve startup founder, or so he claimed, drove a leased BMW and talked about crypto like it was a religion. I remember the night she came home from that party. She smelled like someone else's cologne and looked at me like I was furniture. 3 months later, the refrigerator note, asterisk, I need more than this. I'm sorry, don't contact me. Asterisk. She'd already packed while I was at work. Took the suitcases, the jewelry, half the savings account, left the house keys on the counter like a hotel guest checking out. I won't pretend I handled it with dignity. I didn't eat for 4 days. I called her 67 times. I know because I counted later, disgusted with myself. She blocked me on the 3rd day. The divorce papers arrived by certified mail 6 weeks later, filed from Los Angeles. She didn't ask for the house. She didn't ask for alimony. She wanted a clean cut. And I realized she wasn't just leaving me. She was erasing me. It took 2 years of therapy, a career pivot into my own consulting firm, and a chance meeting at a bookstore before I started breathing again. Sophie was reading a book on behavioral economics, and I made some terrible joke about sunk cost fallacy in relationships. She laughed anyway. That laugh rebuilt me. We married quietly. A small ceremony, 20 people, a backyard in Vermont. Sophie was everything Lisa had called. Boring. She was consistent. She was present. She was warm in the mornings and patient at night. When our daughter was born, I held that tiny body against my chest and felt something seal shut inside me. A door I thought I'd never close. Then Lisa walked through it. She appeared in my office lobby on a Tuesday in March. My assistant buzzed me with a strange voice, said there was a woman who didn't have an appointment but was very insistent. When I stepped out, I almost didn't recognize her. The woman who'd left me for a flashier life looked 10 years older than her age. Hollow cheeks, dark circles pressed deep beneath her eyes, hair pulled into a limp ponytail. She had a toddler on one hip and a baby in a stroller that had a cracked wheel. "Hi," she said, like we'd bumped into each other at a grocery store. My throat locked. I brought her into my office because I didn't know what else to do. She sat across from my desk, the same desk where I'd signed contracts that built my firm from nothing, and she cried for 11 straight minutes before she could form a sentence. The story came out in jagged pieces. Leo's startup was never real. He burned through her half of our savings within 8 months. When the money dried up, so did the charm. She discovered that he was sleeping with other women from his work. When she confronted him about the cheating, he admitted to having multiple hookups because Lisa wasn't that young and attractive to him anymore. She said things got so bad that he started hitting her and physically assaulting her. She'd had 2 children with him, neither planned, both used as leverage to keep her dependent. Lisa wanted me to help her financially. She said she was looking for a job, but hadn't found any luck yet. She hadn't worked for the last 3 months after she got pregnant with her first child years ago now, and the gap in her experience was blocking her from getting a decent job. And if all that wasn't enough, she told me, Leo never married her. He didn't believe in it. He had manipulated her into seeing commitment the same way he did as a cage. That's why she used to call me rudimentary, because I believed in vows, in structure, in staying, but now she said she regretted her decision because she realized what she'd thrown away. I stared at the woman sitting across from me and felt something I wasn't prepared for. Pity, not love, not nostalgia, just a heavy, nauseating pity that sat in my stomach like wet concrete. I gave her $30,000. I told myself it was for the children. Sophie listened that night with her arms crossed, our daughter asleep in the next room. She didn't yell. She just said, "You have a good heart. Don't let her eat it." I should have listened. 3 weeks later, Lisa texted me. A thank you at first, then a check-in, then a smiley face, then a heart emoji, then times I miss what we had. Do you ever think about us, asterisk? I didn't respond. But I didn't block her either. And that silence, that one hesitation, was the crack she'd been looking for. She showed up at my office again. This time she'd done her hair. Wore lipstick. Leaned across my desk and asked if I could help her with a deposit on a house. $60,000. Maybe 100. My phone buzzed while she spoke. A text from Sophie Times. She's there again, isn't she? Asterisk. I looked at Lisa's hopeful, calculated smile, and for the first time, I saw it clearly, the machinery behind the tears. But before I could answer, Lisa reached across the desk and grabbed my hand. "You still love me," she whispered. "I know you do." I pulled my hand back so fast the pen cup on my desk rattled. "Don't," I said. Lisa's fingers hovered in the air where mine had been, then slowly curled into her palm. The lipstick smile didn't falter. "Not yet." "I know you felt that," she said. "I know you still." "What I feel," I said, standing up, "is embarrassed. For you." The smile cracked. Just a hairline fracture, but I saw it. The same way I used to see her micro-expressions when she was calculating whether to tell me the truth or a version of it. "I gave you $30,000, Lisa. $30,000. You know what I told myself? I told myself it was for your children. that those kids didn't choose any of this and they deserved a chance. I called it compassion. Sophie called it compassion. My therapist probably would have called it something else. I'm grateful for that. You're not grateful. You're back. 3 weeks later, lipstick on, asking for $100,000 for a house deposit. That's not gratitude. That's a second appointment. She stood up too, and I watched the performance shift in real time. The softness drained from her face like water from a cracked glass. Something harder surfaced underneath. You have the money, she said. I've seen your office. I've seen your car. You built all of this after I left, and I'm not saying I deserve credit, but what? You think your leaving was the favor? You think walking out with a refrigerator note and half my savings was some kind of motivational speech? I made a mistake. You made a choice. There's a difference. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A choice is packing suitcases while your husband is at work, flying to Los Angeles with a 23-year-old who leased his personality along with his car, and then blocking my number after I called you 67 times begging you to come home. Her jaw tightened. I could see the tendons in her neck. You counted the calls. I counted everything, Lisa. The days I didn't eat. The sessions with a therapist who had to teach me how to sleep again. The months I spent wondering what was so fundamentally wrong with me that my wife would rather gamble on a stranger than stay with the man who paid off her house by 33. I said I regret it. You regret the outcome. Not the choice. You went back to him. Silence. The kind that has weight. Yeah, I said. I know. After that first visit, after you sat in that chair and cried for 11 minutes and told me about the cheating and the hitting and the manipulation, you went back to Leo, didn't you? Her eyes dropped to the desk. He said he'd changed. And when he hadn't changed, when he was still sleeping with other women from his work, still telling you that you weren't young and attractive enough for him, still hitting you, then you came back here. To me, the rudimentary one. She flinched at the word like I'd slapped her with it. I never should have called you that. No, you shouldn't have. But you did. You called me rudimentary because I believed in vows, in structure, in staying. You let Leo manipulate you into seeing commitment as a cage, and then you looked at me, the man who built that cage, with his bare hands, so you'd always have somewhere safe, and you laughed at me for it. My voice had risen. I didn't care. My assistant could hear. The walls were thin. Let them hear. You didn't come here because you missed me, Lisa. You came here because you ran out of options. Leo never married you. He didn't believe in it. He used you until you were inconvenient, and then he discarded you the exact same way you discarded me. The only difference is I left a door open and he didn't. That's not fair. Fair. You left a note on a refrigerator. You want to talk to me about fair? She grabbed her purse. Her hands were shaking, and for a split second I felt the old instinct, the one that wanted to reach out, steady her, fix it. But I watched that instinct the way you watch a match burn down to your fingertips. I let it hurt, then I let it go. The $30,000 was charity, I said, from a man who felt sorry for your children. That's all it was. That's all it ever was. You should be grateful I didn't throw you out on day one. You're cruel, she whispered. No. I'm done. She slammed the door hard enough to knock a frame off the wall. A photo of Sophie and our daughter at the Vermont house. I picked it up, checked the glass. Not broken. That evening I sat Sophie down at the kitchen table and told her everything. The hand grab, the whisper, the lipstick, the $100,000 ask. I held nothing back because I'd learned from years of therapy and one catastrophic marriage that the things you hide become the things that rot. Sophie listened with her hands wrapped around a mug of tea that went cold while I talked. When I finished, she didn't speak for a long time. Are you done? She finally asked. Not angry. Genuine. Permanently. She nodded once. Then be done. The next morning I blocked Lisa's number. Every platform. Email, social media, everything. I called my office manager and gave clear instructions if Lisa appeared again, she was not to be admitted. No exceptions. No messages relayed. I'd spent 6 years building something real from the wreckage of something hollow. A firm. A marriage. A daughter who grabbed my finger when she slept and held on like I was the safest thing in the world. I wasn't going to let the woman who taught me what abandonment felt like teach me the lesson twice. Lisa had wanted me to believe that her suffering entitled her to my life. That because Leo broke her the way she broke me, we were somehow even and the debt ran in her direction now. But misery isn't currency, and regret without accountability is just nostalgia with a price tag. Sophie was right from the beginning. I had a good heart, I just needed to stop letting the wrong person eat it. Lisa vanished after that. No calls from unknown numbers, no visits, No mutual friends carrying messages, just silence. The same kind she'd given me 6 years earlier, except this time, I was the one who chose it. I picked up the Vermont photo from my desk and set it back on the wall. Sophie's laugh in that picture. My daughter's tiny fist raised toward the camera. The door was shut, and this time I held the lock.
Story 6.
I'm sure you've already read his story. I'm the monster. The liar, the cheater, the woman with 2 lives who blew up his world. I've seen the comments. I know what you think of me. And I'm not here to say I didn't do it. I did. Every single thing he said I did is true. I just need you to understand why. People don't just wake up one morning and decide to be a terrible person. It's a slow process. You die a little bit every day until you'll do anything just to feel alive again. I was 17 when I got married. 17. I didn't even know what I wanted for dinner most nights, but I stood in a church and promised my entire life to someone. Before I had a chance to figure out who I was already wife. A year later, I was mother. My whole identity was gone before it ever formed. My own name started to sound weird in my head. It wasn't my name anymore. It was a label for the person who made lunches, did the laundry, and planned holidays. My dreams, the silly little ideas I had about what my life could be, got packed away in a box in the attic like old clothes I'd never fit into again. My husband isn't a bad man. He wasn't abusive or cruel. He was just the man in charge. He was the one who built the box I lived in. Our families knew each other forever. Our lives were so tangled together it was impossible to see where one ended and the other began. Leaving wasn't an option. How could I? I'd be destroying everything for our parents, for our friends, and most of all for our son. He deserved a happy family, a mom and a dad under one roof. I couldn't be the one who took that away from him. Then my husband had an affair. He calls it an emotional affair, but what does that even mean? He was giving a part of himself to someone else, a part that he hadn't given me in years. The nights he spent on his phone, smiling at the screen, left a cold spot in our bed that felt bigger than an ocean. That was it for me. Something inside me, something that had been asleep for a decade, just broke. But I still couldn't leave. I was a coward. So when a temporary work assignment came up, a 2-year post on the other side of the country, it felt like God was giving me a secret exit. It wasn't a job opportunity, it was a lifeboat. I told my husband it was for our finances, a chance to get ahead. He agreed. I packed my bags and I left Em behind in that quiet house with her duties and her broken heart. On the plane, I made a decision. I wasn't M anymore. I was A. A was a new person. A didn't have a husband or a son. A had no history she didn't want. A was finally just herself. And it was the most terrifying and incredible feeling I'd ever had. I never planned to meet him. There wasn't some grand plan to have an affair. I was just trying to breathe. But he was there at a work dinner a few weeks after I arrived. He was funny and smart, and when he looked at me, he actually saw times me. Not a wife, not a mother, just a woman. A. He asked me about my favorite movies, my thoughts on politics, my stupidest childhood memory. For the first time since I was a teenager, someone was interested in who I was, not what I did for other people. The lies came out so easily. I'm divorced. It felt true in a way. The M, who was married, felt like a different person. No kids. That one hurt. It felt like a betrayal to my son, but it was a necessary lie to keep this new world safe. Each lie was a brick I placed in the wall between my two lives. I was so careful to keep them separate. And for 2 years I was happy. Genuinely, truly happy. It was a stolen happiness, but it was mine. We built a life together. We adopted a dog. We spent weekends hiking and lazy Sunday mornings reading the paper in bed. I felt love for who I was, or at least for the person I desperately wanted to be. But the guilt was always there, eating away at me. Once a month I had to fly back. I told him it was a required work trip to the head office. I'd get on the plane as A and get off as M. The change was so jarring it felt like physical pain. I'd walk into my old house, and the smell of it, the sight of my son's toys on the floor would make my stomach twist into knots. I'd hug my son, and his pure, unconditional love felt like a hot poker against my skin. How could I do this to him? I'd sleep in the same bed as my husband, feeling like a ghost haunting someone else's life. All that shame and guilt would curdle inside me. I couldn't let it out in M's world, so it would explode in A's. When I'd get back to him, I'd be a wreck. I'd pick fights over nothing. I'd get angry if he was 5 minutes late. I'd push him away, trying to make him hate me. I was screaming at him without words to just times leave me asterisk. I knew I was a bomb, and I was trying to get him out of the blast zone. I was trying to save him from me. But I was too weak, too selfish. I was addicted to feeling. Seemed to feeling like A, and I couldn't bring myself to end it. Of course, it couldn't last. A house built on lies will always fall down. He started noticing things. A piece of mail that came with my real name on it. An old photo tag on social media from a family friend. He asked why he'd never met any of my friends from back home, why my divorce paperwork was so complicated I couldn't talk about it. Each question was a fresh wave of panic. I'd lie more, making up crazier stories, digging myself deeper and deeper. I kept telling myself that if he just knew the truth about how trapped I was, he'd understand. But that was a fantasy. I had lied about everything that mattered. The day he ended it, it felt like my whole world collapsed. He told me he knew. He didn't have all the details, but he knew I wasn't who I said I was. He was done with the secrets. Losing him was like losing the only part of myself that felt real, I begged. I cried. I sent him long, rambling texts trying to explain. I even posted an old picture of us online, a stupid, desperate move to remind him of what we had. It was ugly and pathetic. He blocked me everywhere. There was just silence. For a week, I lived in that silence floating through my empty apartment. The life I built as A was gone. And I knew it was only a matter of time before the life of M was gone too. I had given him all the power. He knew my real name. He knew the city I was from. It wouldn't be hard to find my husband. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would stop. I was just waiting for the explosion. This morning it came. Not as a loud bang, but as a quiet, simple text message on my screen. It was from my husband. It just said, "We need to talk." Now. I stared at the 3 words on my screen. We need to talk. It wasn't angry. It wasn't accusatory. It was worse. It was final. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely unlock my phone again to call him. I knew I couldn't do this over text. I owed him a voice, a face. I hit the video call button, my heart pounding in my throat like a trapped bird. He answered on the second ring. He was in his home office, the one I'd helped him paint a soft gray 3 years ago. His face was blank. There was no rage, no tears, just nothing. It was the face of a man looking at a stranger, and it was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. "Hi," I whispered. My voice sounded thin and stupid. He didn't say hello back. He just held up his phone to the camera. On his screen was an email. I could see photos. A picture of me and him, the other him grinning on a hiking trail. A screenshot of a text where I said, "I love you." A picture of us with a dog we adopted together. Proof. An entire 2-year life condensed into a single neat package of betrayal delivered straight to my husband's inbox. "He sent this about an hour ago," my husband said, his voice flat. "He included your real name, my work email." He was very thorough. The air left my lungs. I opened my mouth to speak, but what could I say? The lies were all there in color. The first instinct, the stupid animal one, was to deny it, to say it was fake. But looking at his empty eyes, I knew it was useless. The game was over. I started and my voice broke. "I can explain." "Can you?" he asked, and it was a real question. There was no sarcasm in it. "Can you explain a he called you A? Is that what you called yourself?" I just nodded, tears starting to stream down my face. "It's not what you think," I said, the oldest, weakest excuse in the book. I tried to tell him everything. About feeling like a ghost in my own life. About being 17. About his emotional affair, feeling like the final nail in the coffin. I tried to explain that A wasn't about finding someone else, it was about finding myself. The words just sounded hollow and selfish as they came out of my mouth. I was trying to explain the color blue to a blind man. How could he possibly understand? He listened patiently. He didn't interrupt. When I was done a pathetic sobbing mess, there was a long silence. "So you built a new life," he finally said, his voice still terrifyingly calm. "You felt trapped, so you ran away and pretended none of this me, our son, existed. For 2 years. He shook his head slowly. "The affair, what I did, was wrong. It was a crack in the foundation. But you didn't try to fix it. You took a sledgehammer to the whole house, and then you went and built a new one somewhere else." "I'm sorry," I sobbed. "I am so sorry." "I know you are," he said. "You're sorry you got caught." And that was it. That was the truth. He saw right through me. I waited for him to yell, to scream, to tell me he was filing for divorce, that I should never see our son again. I braced for the explosion, but it never came. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, and his tone shifted. It became businesslike. "Your assignment is over. You're going to quit that job and you're coming home. This weekend." I was stunned. "What?" "We are not getting a divorce," he stated, like it wasn't up for discussion. "I am not going to be the one to tell our son that his mother and father are splitting up because she had a secret second family. I will not blow up his world because of what you did. I will not destroy our parents and our families with this. We built this life for 15 years. It's a mess, but I'm not lighting the match. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He wanted me to come home. We were going to stay together. A tiny, sick flicker of hope lit up inside me, and he must have seen it on my face because his expression hardened. "Don't misunderstand me," he said, his voice turning to ice. "This isn't forgiveness. I don't think I can ever forgive you. A is dead. That life you had is over. You're going to come back here, and you are going to be a mother to your son and a wife to me, at least on the outside. We will be civil, we will be parents. But us, what we were, that's gone. You killed it. This is a business arrangement now. The business of raising our child in a stable home. Do you understand?" I understood perfectly. This wasn't a second chance. It was a life sentence. The next few days were a blur. I packed up A's apartment, a place that had felt more like home than anywhere else on earth. Each thing I put in a box felt like a betrayal. The coffee mug he gave me. The stupid poster we bought at a street fair. I took the dog to a shelter, crying so hard in the car that I could barely see the road. I was erasing a person. I was erasing myself. Flying home was the opposite of my flight out 2 years ago. Then I was flying toward freedom. Now I was flying back to my prison. Life now is quiet. So quiet. We live in the same house, but we're a million miles apart. We don't fight. We don't argue. We barely speak unless it's about our son, what he needs for school, who is taking him to soccer practice. We sleep in the same bed, but we stay on our own sides, a giant freezing canyon between us. Sometimes at night I wake up and I can feel him staring at the ceiling, and I know he's thinking about it. About her. About A. He never brings it up. He never calls me a liar or a cheater. He just looks at me sometimes with those same empty eyes from the video call, and I know he sees it all. He doesn't see M, his wife. He sees the liar. He held up his end of the bargain. He told everyone my assignment ended early, and we were so happy to have me home. Our families were thrilled. Our son was ecstatic. On the outside, we are the perfect family. We go to barbecues, we host Christmas. We smile for pictures. It's all a perfect, beautiful lie. And me, I don't have A's freedom, and I don't have the simple, ignorant peace of the old M. I'm just trapped in the wreckage. I destroyed a good man's heart, the man I was cheating on and the man I was cheating with. I broke everything I touched. He was right. I am sorry. I got caught. But that's not the whole truth. The most twisted, horrible part of all of this is that deep down in a place I can never ever say out loud, I miss her. I miss A. Because she was the only one who ever got to be real.
Story 7.
My husband probably thinks our story started the day he found me with another man. But it started years before that in a glass-walled conference room with a boss who kept touching my lower back. Or maybe it started even earlier, when my college professor told me I had a good face for television after I presented a paper on geopolitical theory. For a long time, my life has been a series of men looking at my face and body, but never ever looking at my mind. Don't get me wrong, I love my husband. I know that sounds like a lie right now, but it's the truest thing in all of this mess. He is a good man. He's kind and solid, and when he holds my hand, I feel safe. He comes from a world where things are simple. You work hard, you love your family, you fix what's broken. I fell in love with that simplicity. It felt like an anchor in the storm of my own life. But after a while, an anchor just feels like something holding you down. My career has been a battlefield. At my first big job, my manager would accidentally brush against me in the hallway. He'd make comments about my clothes. I worked twice as hard as any of the men on my team, but in every performance review, he'd praise my positive attitude and ability to brighten up a room. I quit when he cornered me after a client dinner and tried to kiss me. My husband was furious. He held me while I cried and said all the right things, that the guy was a creep, that I was too good for them. But he didn't understand the real poison. The problem wasn't just the harassment. It was that my brain, the thing I was most proud of, was completely invisible to them. I found a new job. Better company, better title, and for a while it was okay. But the feeling slowly crept back in. The condescending smiles from older male colleagues when I spoke up in a meeting. Being asked to take notes because my handwriting was neater. I was fighting every single day just to be taken seriously, to be seen as a strategist and not an ornament. I'd come home exhausted, my mind buzzing with ideas and frustrations, and my husband would be there, bless his heart, wanting to talk about his day, laying tile, or our plans to go kayaking on the weekend. And I'd just say my day was fine, because how do you explain that you're dying of thirst to a man who has never been thirsty a day in his life? Then the big project landed on my desk. And so did he. My coworker. Let's call him Alex. Alex wasn't handsome like my husband. He was thin and wired, always looked like he'd been up for 2 days drinking coffee, which he usually had. But when I talked, he listened. Not just politely waiting for his turn to speak, but really listening. He would argue with me, tear my ideas apart, and force me to defend them. It was brutal and exhilarating. For the first time maybe ever, a man looked at me and saw an equal, an opponent, an ally. We started working late. Our debates over market strategy were electric. It wasn't about flirting, it was about two minds clashing and creating something new. The attraction grew out of that. It wasn't about sex. It was about being seen. One night we had a huge breakthrough and went out for a drink to celebrate. We talked for hours and the conversation shifted from work to everything else. And then he kissed me. It was clumsy and stupid, and I immediately pulled away and ran out of the bar. I went home feeling sick. My husband was asleep, snoring softly, and I just stared at him, my heart pounding with guilt. I knew I had to end it before it even began. It was a mistake. The next day I went to Alex's hotel to tell him just that. But when he opened the door, he had that same look on his face, that look of pure, unadulterated respect. And I just fell apart. That's when the affair started. It lasted for 3 weeks. It was a frantic, desperate, ugly thing. The sex was almost an afterthought, a physical symptom of the intellectual fever we were both running. I felt powerful. I felt brilliant. I felt alive. And I hated myself for it. I was so lost I even made an anonymous post on Reddit, just typing into the void, asking strangers what was wrong with me, why I was doing this when I had a good man at home. I wanted to stop. I just didn't know how. Then came our anniversary, our 10th. I was in my office with Alex, trying to solve one last crisis before I could leave to meet my husband for dinner. I was stressed, and he came up behind me and started rubbing the tension out of my shoulders, whispering some idea about the project into my ear. It wasn't sexual, not really. It was just us. The way we worked. I laughed at something he said, a moment of relief. And that's when the door opened. It was my husband. He was holding the most beautiful bouquet of flowers I'd ever seen. His face, which was usually so open and happy, was just blank. Destroyed. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just walked over to my desk, slammed the flowers down so hard a vase on the credenza jumped, and said, "Happy anniversary." Then he turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him, and the silence in the room was louder than any scream. The fight that night was the worst night of my life. He kept asking why, and I didn't have an answer that would make any sense to him. How could I explain this gaping hole inside me without shattering the image he had of us, of me? So I just cried and said, "I don't know." He asked if I loved him. I said yes, because I do. He asked how many times. I told him the truth. Every word felt like a stone I was handing him to throw at me. The next morning the house was silent. He'd slept on the couch. I found him in the kitchen staring at his phone. He looked up at me and his eyes were cold, like I was a stranger he'd found in his house. "I have one more question," he said, his voice flat. "This guy at work, did he by any chance challenge you intellectually?" My blood ran cold. He had found it. He had found my anonymous scream into the internet, and he was holding it like a knife. The one place I had been completely brutally honest, and he had read it all. The confusion, the self-hatred, the desperate need for validation. He'd seen the ugliest, weakest parts of my soul. "It's not like that," I whispered, but the words were ash in my mouth. How do you explain an identity crisis to a man who has never once questioned who he is? "Isn't it?" he shot back, his voice finally cracking the coldness, giving way to a raw, ragged pain. "It's right there in black and white. You wanted someone to challenge you." "What am I, Megan?" "A simpleton you come home to after you're done playing with the grown-ups." "Am I just the guy who fixes the damn sink and rubs your feet? Is that all I've been for 10 years? "No, God, no," I cried, stepping towards him, but he flinched back like I was on fire. "It was never about you being dumb. You're the smartest person I know about things that matter about real life. This was about my work. It's a snake pit. They look at me and they see a skirt. Alex, he saw my brain. That's all it was at first." He just laughed, a horrible, bitter sound. "That's all it was. You think I'm an idiot. I saw him, Megan. With his hands on you. Don't you dare tell me this was some book club that got out of hand. You fucked him." The word hit me like a slap. He'd never spoken to me like that. Not once in our entire lives together. The dam broke. I was sobbing, trying to force the words out. I know, and I hate myself for it, but it wasn't about love or even sex, not really. It was about feeling powerful for 1 second in a world that makes me feel so stupid and small all day long. I was drowning, and it felt like a life raft. "I was your life raft," he finally roared, and the force of it pushed me back. "For 10 years, who held you when you came home crying from those shitty jobs? Who told you that you were brilliant and that they were morons? Who was there? Me, I was here. And you threw it all away for some guy who could talk to you about what market shares and quarterly reports. Is that what our marriage was worth? He was right. He had been there. He had always been my safe harbor. And in my desperate search for a different kind of validation, I had set fire to the one place I was ever truly safe. There was nothing I could say. He saw the affair as a verdict on him, and maybe it was. Maybe my needing something he couldn't give me was a flaw in our marriage from the very start. He told me to pack a bag and go to my parents' house. He said he couldn't even look at me. The silence as I threw clothes into a suitcase was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. I'd been at my parents' house for 2 days, walking around like a ghost when my mom sat me down. She told me she had gone to see him. I felt a surge of rage. How could she interfere? He's a good man, Megan, she said, her voice quiet. He's broken. He just kept saying he didn't understand, that he thought you were happy. What did you tell him? I asked, my voice shaking. I told him about Robert. Robert, the man she dated before my father, the mechanic with the kind eyes and the easy laugh, the man she left for my dad, a successful lawyer with a country club membership. I had heard his name maybe twice in my entire life. She told me how she had convinced herself it was the right thing to do, the smart thing. She chose status and security. And she told my husband that not a month has gone by in 40 years that she hasn't wondered what her life would have been if she'd stayed with the man she truly loved, the man who made her feel simple and happy. Why would you tell him that? I whispered, horrified. You made it sound like I was going to leave him. No, she said, looking me straight in the eye. I told him that so he would understand that sometimes people with too much ambition get lost. We make terrible, life-ruining mistakes because we're chasing something we think we need, and we trample the things we actually love. I told him that I saw my own stupid, prideful mistake in you, and that he shouldn't let you make it permanent. Her words didn't fix anything, but they shifted something inside me. For weeks I had been telling a story about my own intellectual hunger, my professional frustrations. My mother in one conversation had reframed it as a simple, tragic story of love and regret. She didn't excuse what I did, she just explained it in a language he could understand. It's been a month now. We're talking. Not like we used to. The calls are stiff and painful. We're in therapy both separately and together. Our couples therapist is a no-nonsense woman who says things like, validation is an internal job. I hate it when she says that, mostly because I know she's right. I used Alex to feel powerful, and I used my husband's simple goodness as an excuse. The affair wasn't a symptom of my identity crisis. The affair times was times the crisis. He's trying. I can see him trying. He asked me to explain one of my projects to him the other day. He listened, really listened, and asked questions. They weren't the challenging, incisive questions Alex would have asked, but they were his questions. He was trying to see my world. It was the most loving thing he has ever done for me, and it broke my heart all over again. I don't know if we'll make it. The trust is shattered, maybe forever. He looks at me sometimes, and I can see him replaying that scene in my office. I look at him and see the man whose heart I broke because I was too weak and too selfish to fix myself. I blew up our life looking for a spark, and now all I do is sit in the dark and miss the steady, simple warmth of the home I burned down. I love him. I just don't know if that's enough anymore.
Story 8.
I'm sure you've heard her side of the story. I know how she paints me. I'm the monster-in-law, the overbearing matriarch who ruined her perfect little family. It's an easy story to tell, and an even easier one to believe. But it's not the truth. The truth is, I was the only one trying to hold that family together. My son Michael is a good man. I know every mother says that, but it's true. He has a heart that's almost too big for his own good. He's kind and gentle, but he's also sensitive. He feels things so deeply, and he trusts people too easily. I've always had to be the strong one, the one who looks out for him, because he'd give his whole world to someone who didn't deserve it. And that's exactly what he did. When he met her, Sarah, I tried to be open-minded. I really did. But the red flags were there from the very beginning. She told us all these stories about her past, a long list of bad relationships with narcissists and toxic men. I remember thinking, if everyone you've ever dated is a narcissist, maybe you're the common denominator. But Michael was so happy. He said she was different. So I welcomed her. I invited her to family dinners. I taught her my recipes. I treated her like a daughter. But I saw things that worried me. She didn't really have her own life. As soon as she started dating Michael, she dropped all her old friends and hobbies to become whatever she thought he wanted. It wasn't healthy. It was like she was a chameleon playing a part. And sometimes the mask would slip. The fights started pretty quickly. He would call me sometimes in the middle of the night, completely distraught. She would get an idea in her head and just explode. The smallest disagreement would turn into a huge drama. She was always threatening to leave, packing a bag and running off to a hotel. He would be a wreck, blaming himself, and I would have to talk him down for hours. He was trying so hard to give her a stable life, something she clearly never had. It all came to a head one night. They had a massive fight, the worst one yet. Michael finally had enough of the constant threats and told her to just go. He actually kicked her out of the house. He was heartbroken, but I thought maybe this is for the best. Maybe he finally sees how unstable she is. 3 days later, he called me. He told me he'd bought a ring and proposed. I couldn't believe it. He said he thought a real commitment, a real show of stability, was what she needed to feel secure. And of course, she accepted the engagement ring. She knew she had him. Things were quiet for a little while, but the pattern started again. More fights, more drama. Then came the final dramatic exit. She packed her bags and checked into a hotel, telling him it was over for good this time. Michael was about to give up. He was exhausted. And then, like a miracle for her and a nightmare for him, she called him from the hotel room. She was pregnant. What was he supposed to do? He's an honorable man. I raised him to take responsibility for his actions. So he did what he thought was the right thing. They went down to the courthouse and got married before the baby was born. No party, no celebration. It was a business transaction to give his child a name. He was determined to make it work for the baby. I knew then and there that my job was far from over. I knew he was going to need me more than ever. When my grandson Leo was born, I packed a bag and drove straight there. Michael called me and he sounded terrified. He said Sarah was a wreck. And he was right. When I walked into that house, it was pure chaos. Dishes piled up, laundry everywhere. And Sarah, she was a ghost. She was crying all the time, just hysterical. She could barely hold her own son. She was drowning in what everyone now calls postpartum depression, and my grandson was paying the price. So I did what any loving grandmother would do. I rolled up my sleeves and I took over. I sent Michael to get some sleep, I cleaned the house, and I took care of that baby. I made sure Leo was fed, that he was clean, that he was held and comforted. Sarah was trying to breastfeed, but it wasn't working. The baby was crying from hunger, and she was crying from stress and pain. It was a disaster. I helped her set up a pumping schedule so that I, or Michael, could give the baby a bottle and she could get some rest. It was the only practical solution. Sometimes I had to physically take Leo from her arms. She would be holding him while she was sobbing, just shaking, and her anxiety was making him scream. A baby can feel that. So I'd say, "Here, honey, let me take him. You go take a shower and calm down." I was trying to help. I was trying to teach her. My own son understood. He saw how much she was struggling. He would sneak the baby to her later when she was calm and had a moment of clarity. He was just trying to keep the peace. I stayed for 2 months. 2 months of cooking, cleaning, and taking care of a newborn around the clock while also trying to counsel a hysterical new mother. It was exhausting, thankless work. I saw that she didn't just need help with the baby. She needed guidance on how to be part of a family. Our family. We're close. We talk, we support each other, we respect our elders. She came from a broken home and didn't understand that. One afternoon when the baby was sleeping and Michael was at the store, I decided it was time for a real talk, woman to woman. I sat her down at the kitchen table. I made her a cup of tea. I told her gently that being a mother was the hardest job in the world and that she wasn't failing, she just needed to accept help. I explained that in our family we lean on each other, and that means listening to the wisdom of those who have done it before. I told her I wasn't trying to criticize her, I was trying to give her the tools she needed to succeed for Leo's sake. I was offering her my support, my lifetime of experience. I thought it was a breakthrough moment. I thought she would finally understand that I was on her side. She just stared at me, her eyes cold. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just looked right through me and said, "I don't need your wisdom. I need you to leave my house." I just sat there holding my lukewarm cup of tea and stared at her. It was like a slap in the face. After 2 months of breaking my back for her child, for my son, that's what I got. Not a thank you, not a "I appreciate you, but leave my house." The venom in her voice was something I'd never heard before. It was cold, hard, and final. I felt the air get sucked out of the room. All the warmth I had tried to build, all the support I had offered just vanished. Before I could even respond, we heard the key in the front door. Michael walked in holding a bag of groceries, a big smile on his face. The smile died the second he saw us. He could feel the tension. It was thick enough to choke on. "What's going on?" he asked, looking back and forth between us. Sarah didn't even look at him. She just kept her eyes locked on me. "I've asked your mother to leave," she said, her voice flat. Michael looked at me confused. "Mom, what happened?" I stood up, my hands shaking a little. "I have no idea, Michael. We were just talking. I was telling her how much we all love her and want to help her, and she just turned on me." I tried to keep my voice steady to show him I was the calm, rational one. She seems to think my help is some kind of attack. That's when Sarah finally broke. She stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. "An attack! You call this help!" she finally yelled, her voice cracking. "You haven't helped. You've invaded. You took over my home. You took over my child. You walk in here and decide I'm not a good enough mother, so you just push me aside. I can't hold my own son without you hovering over me, telling me I'm doing it wrong, that my anxiety is hurting him." I was stunned. This was how she saw it. My 2 months of thankless round-the-clock work to save her and my grandson were an invasion. My guidance was abuse. She was twisting everything. "I was trying to give you a break," I said, my voice rising to match hers. "You were a mess. You couldn't stop crying. The baby was screaming. What was I supposed to do? Just stand by and watch you both fall apart?" "You were supposed to ask me what I needed," she shrieked. "You were supposed to support me, not replace me. You act like he's your baby, not mine." She turned to Michael, her eyes pleading. "Are you hearing this? Are you going to let her talk to me this way in our own home? Are you ever going to stand up for me?" Michael just stood there frozen like a deer in headlights. He looked from her face to mine, his expression pained. He hates conflict. His gentle heart can't take it. He just wants everyone to be happy. "Sarah, let's all just calm down," he stammered. "Mom was just trying to..." But he never got to finish. The look on Sarah's face when he said that, it was pure devastation. It was the moment she gave up on him. She didn't scream anymore. She just shook her head, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "I see," she whispered. Then she turned and walked upstairs without another word. That was the end. I packed my bags in silence while Michael tried to talk to her through the locked bedroom door. He begged her to come out to talk about it. But there was nothing left to say. She had poisoned his mind, convinced his gentle heart that my love was control. She used me as the scapegoat for a marriage that was broken from the very start. I kissed my son goodbye on the cheek and told him to call me. Driving away from that house, I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt a deep, profound sadness for him and for my grandson trapped in there with her. The next few weeks were a nightmare of silence and short, strained phone calls. Michael would tell me they were working on it, but his voice was hollow. I knew it was over. Then the call I was dreading finally came. He was sobbing so hard I could barely understand him. She had filed for divorce. And the reason she gave him his failure to stand up for her against his family. Against me. A mother who loved them. A woman who sacrificed 2 months of her life for them. That was my reward. It got uglier from there. She cut me off completely. My calls went to voicemail. My texts were left unread. The final petty little knife twist came one evening when I was scrolling through my phone. I noticed our family group chat was quieter than usual. Then I realized why. She had left the group. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. Such a childish, passive-aggressive display. It was her final act of cutting Michael's family out of her life, and by extension out of Leo's life. Now she's raising my grandson away from his family, denying him the love and support system he deserves. She posts pictures online of their new life, flaunting her freedom and her healing. She's the brave single mom who escaped a toxic situation. And I'm the villain. I'm left with a broken-hearted son who I have to painstakingly piece back together, and a grandson who I barely get to see, who will grow up hearing stories about his horrible, controlling grandmother. She destroyed my son's family, and somehow I am the one who gets the blame. People will always believe her side of the story because it's simpler. It's easier to point a finger at the meddling mother-in-law, but they didn't see the late-night phone calls, the unstable girl who ran to hotels, the hysterical new mother who couldn't cope. They didn't see me cleaning her house, feeding her child, and trying to teach her how to be a part of a family that loved her. All I ever did was try to hold it all together. All I ever did was love them too much. And for that I lost everything.
Story 9.
My husband probably told you his story. The one where he's the hero, the wronged man who came home to find his wife with someone else. I'm sure he painted me as a monster, a snake, and maybe I am. But you only heard what he wanted you to hear. You heard about the fire and the fight. You didn't hear about the silence. For years, all I heard was silence. Let me tell you about my birthday this year. It started like every other day for the past decade. I woke up alone. My husband, let's call him David, was already gone for work. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from him. 3 letters, happy birthday. Not happy birthday, honey. Not an emoji. Just the kind of text you send to a coworker you barely know. That was it. That was the celebration. He hadn't mentioned it the night before, and I knew he wouldn't mention it when he got home. There wouldn't be a card or a badly wrapped gift or even a suggestion to go out for dinner. For a long time now, I've felt more like a household appliance than a person. I'm the Roomba that keeps the floors clean, the dishwasher that makes sure there are plates, the slow cooker that has a hot meal ready at 6 p.m. sharp. I manage the bills, I schedule the parent-teacher conferences for our daughter, I remember his mother's birthday and buy the gift. I keep the entire machine of our lives running smoothly, and I do it so well that I've become completely invisible. David comes home, sees a clean house and a fed child, and assumes it all just happens. He stopped seeing the person doing it all a very, very long time ago. He stopped seeing times me asterisk. It's a slow death, that kind of invisibility. You start to wonder if you're even real. You talk and nobody seems to hear you. You try to start a conversation about your day and he just grunts while scrolling through his phone. You put on a new dress and he doesn't notice. You cry quietly in the bathroom so you don't disturb him. You become a ghost in your own home. Then I met someone. We'll call him Alex. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something I went looking for. He's the dad of one of my daughter's friends. We started talking at school pickups. Just small talk at first. But then he started asking me questions. About my day, about my interest. He remembered that I liked gardening and asked me about my tomato plants a week later. It was such a small thing, but it felt like a miracle. Someone was actually listening. Our chats turned into texts. He sent me funny articles he thought I'd like. He sent me paragraphs, not acronyms. He told me I was witty. He told me I was smart. When I made a joke, he actually laughed. He made me feel like the person I used to be before I got lost in my marriage. He saw me. Was it wrong, God? Of course it was. I knew it was. I felt guilty every single second. But it was also like taking a deep breath after being held underwater for years. It was a spark. It was a reminder that I was still in here, that the woman who liked to laugh and talk about books and feel beautiful hadn't completely disappeared. On my birthday, after I got that happy birthday text, something in me just broke. I was sitting in a silent house, a house I kept perfect for a man who wouldn't even type out the full words, "Happy birthday" for me. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. It was Alex. It was a long message telling me he hoped I had a wonderful day, that I deserved to be celebrated. And he mentioned a funny story I'd told him last week. He remembered. A relative stranger remembered more about me than my own husband. I made a decision. A reckless, stupid, selfish decision. I told him David was working late and asked if he wanted to come over for a drink to celebrate my pathetic birthday, I joked. It was supposed to be a small act of rebellion. One afternoon where I felt like a person, not a function. It wasn't about sex, not really. It was about connection. It was about having someone look me in the eye and make me feel like I mattered on a day I felt completely and utterly forgotten. He came over. We talked. We laughed so much. He brought a stupid little cupcake with a single candle on it. It was more effort than David had put into my birthday in 5 years. One thing led to another. The connection I was so desperate for became physical. We ended up in my bedroom, and his clothes ended up on the floor mixed with mine. It was careless and fast, and for a few minutes I didn't think about my grocery list, or the dry cleaning, or the silence. We were in the shower together, washing away the guilt, laughing about something ridiculous. The water was hot, the steam was thick, and for the first time in forever I felt happy. Genuinely, uncomplicatedly happy. It was a bubble of joy, and I knew it was temporary, but I was so grateful for it. That's when I heard it. A sound from downstairs that didn't belong. The distinct sound of a key turning in the front door lock. My blood went cold. It was too early. David wasn't supposed to be home for hours. He's early, the thought screamed in my head. He came home to surprise me. The irony was so cruel, it almost made me laugh. The one day he decides to do something special is the one day I've ruined everything. The bubble didn't just pop. It exploded, and all that was left was ice-cold terror. I grabbed a towel, my heart hammering against my ribs. Alex wrapped one around his waist, his face a mask of confusion and panic. I stepped out of the bathroom first, trying to form a lie, any lie that could possibly explain this. But the words died in my throat the moment I saw him. David was standing in our living room. He wasn't crying, he wasn't yelling. That would have been better. Instead, he just looked at me. His eyes were completely flat, like slate. There was nothing behind them. No hurt, no sadness, just a terrifying emptiness. He looked right through me as if I was already gone and said, "Happy birthday." The words were so quiet, so devoid of any emotion, that they chilled me more than any scream ever could. That's when I smelled it. Acrid smoke like a barbecue gone wrong. It was coming from the open front door. I looked past David's shoulder and saw it. There was a fire in our driveway. Not just a little fire, but a bonfire. For a second, my brain just refused to understand what I was seeing. Then I recognized the shape of a shirt, the dark leather of a wallet curling in the flames. He had taken Alex's clothes, his phone, his keys, and he had set them on fire. This wasn't a man heartbroken by betrayal. This was something else entirely. This was calculated. This was a performance. This was a man who solves problems by setting fires. My shock curdled into pure, undiluted terror. Who was this person I had shared a bed with for 15 years? Alex came out of the bedroom behind me, completely lost. "What's going on?" he whispered. David didn't even look at me. He kept his eyes on Alex. "Your clothes are in the driveway," he said, his voice still unnervingly calm. "You should probably go get them." The look on Alex's face was absolute horror. He was trapped. Naked but for one of my husband's towels. My husband, who was now dangling Alex's car keys from his finger. Holding them like a trophy he'd just won. In that moment, I wasn't trying to protect my lover. I was trying to de-escalate what felt like a hostage situation. I was trying to stop the terrifyingly calm man in my living room from doing something much, much worse. "David, please," I begged. "Just let him go. This is my fault." He finally looked at me, a flicker of something ugly in his eyes. "Oh, I know. I'll get him some sweats," I said, moving toward our bedroom. "Just some pants so he can leave." "Please. I just wanted to get Alex out of there safely to end this nightmare." But David moved, blocking my path to the bedroom. He was enjoying this. He was savoring the power he had over us. "What about protecting me?" he asked, a sneer twisting his face. "In my own house, what about that?" I was speechless. He was the one who had set a fire on our property. He was the one standing there like a predator, enjoying the fear he was causing. How could he possibly see himself as the victim? Alex, seeing that I was getting nowhere, took a step forward. He just wanted to leave. "Look, man," he started, "just give me a pair of pants. I'll walk home. I'll do whatever you want." He took one step too close. It happened so fast. David didn't just push him. He dropped the keys and swung. The sound of his fist hitting Alex's face was sickeningly wet and loud. Alex stumbled back, clutching his eye, the towel almost falling off him. A man who was half naked, unarmed, and just trying to cover himself. A man who posed zero threat. And my husband hit him. Hard. I saw it then. The violence he was capable of simmering just under that quiet surface I'd mistaken for calm strength for all these years. This wasn't the righteous anger of a betrayed husband. This was a monster. "Get out," David spat, his voice finally breaking with rage. He pointed at Alex. "And you," he said, turning to me, his face twisted with a hatred I'd never seen before. "You get out too." He shoved Alex toward the door, and then he shoved me. I stumbled out onto the front porch, the rough concrete scraping my bare feet. He threw Alex's keys onto the grass and slammed the door. The lock clicked shut. And there we were. Me and Alex standing on our front lawn in nothing but towels. The neighbors' curtains were twitching. A bonfire of clothes, lighter fluid, and dignity was smoldering in my driveway. Alex's eye was already starting to swell and turn a dark, ugly purple. He had a black eye. He had no phone, no wallet, and his car was locked. The shame was so immense I thought it would swallow me whole. But underneath it was something else, a cold, hard clarity. The affair was my mistake. It was a selfish, messy, horrible mistake born out of loneliness. But this was him. The man who would set a fire. The man who would punch an unarmed person. The man who would throw his wife out of her home half naked on her birthday. He thinks he's the hero of this story. The man who took a stand. He probably tells people he kicked a cheater out of his house. He doesn't tell them he revealed himself as a violent, controlling monster. He thinks the story is about what I did in our bed. He doesn't understand that the real story is about what he did in our driveway. He didn't just burn some clothes. He burned down any illusion I had left of the man I married. He validated every single fear I ever had about being trapped with him. I'm not sorry for wanting to feel alive. I am sorry for the pain I caused. But I am not sorry that I'm not in that house anymore. Because I wasn't just kicked out. I was set free. I just had to see the monster first to realize I was in a cage all along.
Story teen.
I'm sure you've heard his side of the story. I'm the wife, the one he calls Dub Dub, the woman who lied for over 30 years. It's a simple story when he tells it. I cheated, I lied, he found out, and now our marriage is a sham. It's clean, it's easy, and it makes me the villain. But it's not the truth. Not the whole truth anyway. To understand, you have to understand who I was back then. I was 20 years old when I went to South America. 20. I thought I was so grown up joining a volunteer program going to save the world. I wanted to prove to everyone, especially myself, that I was strong and independent. The reality was very different. The heat was suffocating. I didn't speak the language well. Every day was a struggle, and I was so lonely. The person I was, supposed to be this brave, adventurous woman, was just a scared girl who cried herself to sleep most nights. My boyfriend, my husband now, was back in the U.S. He'd write me these wonderful letters about his classes, his friends, his life. I loved getting them, but they also made me feel a million miles away. They were a reminder of a life I wasn't living, a world that was moving on without me. He couldn't possibly understand what it was like. He couldn't understand the isolation, the feeling of being completely invisible in a crowd of people. And then there was someone who did understand. A coworker in the program. It didn't start as anything big. It wasn't a plan. It was just a shared look when something went wrong. A laugh over a terrible meal. A hand on my shoulder when I was having a bad day. He was times there asterisk. He was real and in the present when my actual life felt like it was on hold. I wasn't looking for an affair. I was just looking for a friend, for someone to make the loneliness stop screaming in my head for a little while. It drifted from friendship into something more. It was a comfort, a way to feel something other than lost. I knew it was wrong, of course I did. I felt sick with guilt every single day. I wrote everything down in my diary. Every confusing thought, every moment of guilt, every bit of it. I had no one else to talk to. The diary was my only friend, the only place I could try to make sense of the person I was becoming. I didn't even recognize her myself. She was messy and selfish and weak. I hated her. Things got real when my boyfriend came to visit for the first time. Seeing him was like coming up for air after being underwater for too long. This was my real life. This was the man I loved. But having him there in that place, it just made everything so much worse. The guilt was a physical thing, like a stone in my stomach. I couldn't look him in the eye. After he left, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't live with a secret. In January, I sent him a letter. I told him I was seeing someone else. I couldn't bring myself to write the whole truth, all the ugly details from my diary. It was too much. I thought if I just told him a little bit, just cracked the door open on this horrible secret, he could help me shut it for good. I was hoping he would save me from myself. He called me after he got the letter. I remember standing in a hot, dusty office, the phone cord wrapped around my hand so tight my knuckles were white. His voice wasn't angry, not at first. It was just firm. Clear. He told me that if I wanted us to have a future, I had to end it. Right then. No excuses. He gave me a choice, an ultimatum. And honestly, it was the biggest relief of my life. He gave me a way out, a path back to him, back to the person I wanted to be. I grabbed onto it like a drowning woman. I promised him I'd end it, and I did. In my heart, in my head, it was over that second. I told him it was just a fling, that it didn't mean anything. Because that's what it had to be. In the story of the life I wanted with him, this affair could only be a small, stupid mistake. A footnote. So I packed all the other feelings, all the messy details into a box in my mind, and I locked it shut. When he visited the second time, it was different. I was myself again. I was his. The girl who wrote those diaries was gone. I left her behind in South America. We got married a few months after I came home. For the next 34 years, we built a life. A real life. We had kids, we bought a house, we had inside jokes and favorite restaurants. We were happy. That past that mistake, it wasn't a secret I was keeping. It was just gone. It was a blurry photo from an album I never looked at. I truly, genuinely forgot the details. My mind just wiped them away because they didn't fit into the beautiful life we had built. Then 3 years ago, he sat me down in the living room. He had this serious look on his face, and I actually got a little excited. I thought, finally he wants to have one of those deep talks people are always talking about. He wants to connect. I leaned forward, ready to listen. And then he said he wanted to talk about my time in South America. I just stared at him. I was so confused. That was 35 years ago, I said. It wasn't a deflection. It wasn't me being difficult. It was the honest-to-God truth of how I felt. It was another lifetime. It was about another person. It had absolutely nothing to do with us. With the 60-year-old woman sitting on the couch next to him. He didn't see it that way. My confusion just made him angry. He said I was minimizing what happened. The conversation didn't go well. For the next few weeks, there was a strange quiet in the house. He was distant, looking at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. I tried to talk to him, but it was like he was behind a glass wall. One Saturday afternoon, I came home from the grocery store and the house was too quiet. I called his name, no answer. I checked the hole downstairs, then went up. I heard a noise from the attic, a scraping sound. I climbed the pull-down stairs and my heart just stopped. The attic was a mess of old boxes and forgotten things. And there, in the middle of it all, was my husband. He was sitting on the floor with a dusty cardboard box in front of him. A box I hadn't seen since we moved in 30 years ago. My box. He pulled out a small faded cloth-bound book. Then another. My diaries. He looked up at me, his face pale, and then he opened the first one to a random page. He didn't yell. He didn't even look angry, not really. He just looked empty. He opened the book and his voice was flat, hollow as he started to read an entry. The words were mine. I recognized the handwriting, but the person he was describing felt like a stranger. He read about a date, a kiss, a feeling of excitement mixed with guilt. It was the voice of a confused, lonely girl. "Stop," I whispered. "Please don't." He just turned a page. "This is from January 15th, 1984, he said, his voice as sharp as glass. "The day after I called you. The day after you promised me it was over." He read the entry aloud. It was about seeing the other man again. About how hard it was to say goodbye. About how it didn't feel over at all. My blood ran cold. I stared at him, my mind a complete blank. "I don't remember writing that," I said, and it was the truth. I didn't. In my memory, our phone call was a clean break. He gave me an ultimatum and I took it. End of story. But here was proof in my own hand that the story I'd lived with for 35 years was a lie. He kept reading. He read passages from February, from March. He read about my second visit with him and then an entry from the week after I got back about meeting the other man one last time. Every word he read was a hammer blow, shattering the foundation of the life I thought we had. He was reading the unedited, ugly reality that my mind had so carefully cut out and thrown away. I saw his face twist in pain as he read the words of the 2-0-year-old girl. And he aimed all that pain at the 6-0-year-old woman standing in front of him. Watching him, I finally understood. He wasn't just mad about an affair that happened decades ago. He was mourning. He was mourning the 34 years he believed he was married to one woman, only to find out she was someone else entirely. In his eyes, our entire life was built on a lie I told on a crackly phone line from South America. But he doesn't understand. I didn't lie. I times forgot, asterisk. My mind, in an act of self-preservation I didn't even know was happening, protected me. It protected times us, asterisk. It buried the details that would have destroyed us before we even started. It built a more palatable history, a simpler story, and I lived inside that story so completely that I forgot it wasn't the absolute truth. The person who wrote those things was a ghost. I'd spent my whole adult life making sure I was nothing like her. The argument that followed downstairs was the worst of our lives. He kept shouting, "Why? Why would you lie to me for all these years?" And all I could say was, I didn't remember. It sounded like such a pathetic excuse even to my own ears. How could a person forget something so big? But I had. I had packed her away, that weak, selfish girl, and slammed the door. After that day, the silence in our house was deafening. We slept in separate rooms. We were like two strangers living together, moving around each other, careful not to touch. I tried to talk to him to explain, but he would just look at me with this hollowed-out expression. He was looking right through me at the ghosts from the diaries. He started questioning everything. Our wedding anniversary. Were you thinking of him then, a vacation we took? Was that a happy memory, or were you just pretending? Every good moment we'd ever had was now tainted suspect. I was watching our entire history crumble to dust in front of my eyes, and I couldn't do anything to stop it. I tried to apologize. I told him I was sorry for the pain I caused for what that girl did so long ago. But it wasn't enough. He didn't want an apology from me, the woman he'd been married to for 34 years. He wanted an apology for the lie, for the deception. And how can I apologize for a lie I didn't even know I was telling? About 6 months after he found the diaries, he told me he wanted a divorce. He said he couldn't live with a stranger. He said he didn't know who I was anymore. That was the moment my heart truly broke. Not in the attic, but right there in our kitchen, with the evening sun coming through the window, making everything look warm and normal when our world was ending. He says I stole his choice. That if he had known the whole truth back in 1984, he might have made a different decision. Maybe he would have. But that young, scared girl in a foreign country made the only choice she knew how to make. She chose the future she wanted more than anything. She chose times him asterisk. She clung to the one good, stable thing in her life and buried the mess she'd made to keep it. It wasn't malicious. It was survival. Now I'm sitting in an apartment that doesn't feel like home, surrounded by boxes from a life that feels like it belonged to someone else. He's still in the house we built together. Sometimes I let myself believe that he'll call that. He'll say he understands. That he realizes the 34 years of love, laughter, and life we shared are more real than the scribblings of a confused girl from half a lifetime ago. But I don't think he will. He's in love with the memory of a marriage, and he's angry at a ghost. I'm the one who's still here. I love him. I love the man he is, and I love the life we had. I just don't know how to make him see that I'm not the villain in those pages anymore. I haven't been for a very, very long time.
Story 11.
I've seen what my ex-husband wrote online. I know he's getting a lot of support, a lot of people telling him how strong he is for what he did. And I guess from his point of view, he's the perfect victim. He was the perfect husband after all. On paper, he did everything right. Our marriage looked like a movie. He was always planning things, always surprising me. A weekend trip he'd booked months ago, a fancy dinner at a restaurant I'd mentioned once, a little bracelet left on my pillow just because it was a Tuesday. In the beginning, it was amazing. I felt so loved, so seen. But after 6 years, the grand gestures started to feel hollow. It was like he was a director and I was his lead actress. My only job was to be happy, to be grateful, to applaud his performance as the perfect husband. The loneliness was the worst part. It sounds crazy, right? How can you be lonely when your husband is so attentive? But it was like living in a beautiful, empty house. All my friends were his friends. My hobbies had become his hobbies. My whole life was just an extension of his. A few months ago, I finally broke down and told him how I felt. I told him I had no one, that my world felt so small. He was, of course, super supportive. He told me to find a hobby, join a club. For him, it was another problem to solve, another box to check off on his list of being a good husband. So I did. I joined a local meetup group for board game nights. It was the first thing I had done just for myself in years. And it was incredible. I met people who didn't know me as his wife. They just knew me. I could be goofy, I could be bad at a game, I could just be. And nobody was judging my performance. That's where I met Mark. It wasn't some dramatic love at first sight thing. It was just easy. We liked the same dumb sci-fi movies. We had the same stupid sense of humor. Talking to him felt like taking a deep breath after holding it for too long. He saw me, the actual person, not the role I was playing at home. Back home, my new life became a problem. My husband's support quickly turned into suspicion. A text message would make him ask, "Who's that?" with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. If I was a few minutes late coming home from a meetup, I'd get a gentle, worried interrogation about where I was. He admitted he was jealous, but he said it in a way that made it my problem to manage. His trust wasn't a given. It was something I had to earn back every single day, and the cage he was building around me felt like it was getting smaller and smaller. It got to the point where I couldn't even meet a friend for coffee without it turning into a huge emotional drama about his anxiety. He'd be supportive to my face, but then I'd have to spend hours reassuring him that nothing was going on. It was exhausting. So one Saturday I lied. It was such a small, stupid lie. I told him I was going into town to look for a birthday present for my niece. Really, I was just going to Mark's house to play a new board game he'd bought. I just wanted 2 hours of peace. 2 hours where I didn't have to manage someone else's feelings. Of course, that's not what happened. He must have been watching the clock. He must have known exactly how long it would take me to get to town and back. When I didn't answer a text right away, he panicked. He drove to Mark's house. I don't know how he even knew the address. He just sat in his car and watched my car parked in the driveway. When I got home, he was a complete wreck. He was crying, shaking, telling me he thought I was dead in a ditch. Then the questions started. When he finally told me he'd driven to Mark's, my blood ran cold. I tried to explain. I told him the only reason I lied was because I knew he would react exactly like this. That his jealousy made it impossible to tell the truth. He called it gaslighting. I was trying to preserve my own sanity, and he twisted it into me being a manipulator. That was the night I knew it was over. He wasn't seeing a wife who was suffocating. He was seeing an enemy who had betrayed him. After that day, the house was unbearable. It was a prison of silent suspicion. My phone became a weapon. Every time it buzzed, he would flinch. My absences weren't just me being out. They were evidence of my crimes. Mark's house was the only place I could breathe. He was the only person I could talk to who didn't look at me like I was a villain. What happened between us wasn't planned. It was just a result of everything else. It was a hand to hold when I felt like I was drowning. It was comfort and understanding and a connection I was absolutely starved for at home. It was a mistake, a foolish, desperate escape, but it happened. My sister knew. She'd been listening to me cry on the phone for months about how trapped I felt. She never said anything to my husband because it wasn't her story to tell. It was my mess. Christmas felt like the final test. I really did try to make it work. I suggested we have our own special Christmas on the 23rd and 24th, just the two of us. We could exchange gifts, cook together, and try to find a little bit of what we used to have. The 2 days were nice, but it was all an act. We were two actors playing the roles of a happy couple, and we were both exhausted. On Christmas Eve, after we'd opened our last gifts, I couldn't do it anymore. I told him I was going over to my sister's for a bit. It was another lie. I couldn't spend one more minute walking on eggshells, pretending everything was okay in our perfect little house. I drove to Mark's. It wasn't about choosing him over my husband. It was about choosing to stop pretending, even if just for one night. We ordered a pizza and put on an old Christmas movie. For a few hours, I almost felt normal. We talked, we laughed. It was quiet, it was peaceful. Around 11 p.m., my phone, which I'd put on silent on the counter, lit up. I glanced over and saw his name on the screen. He was calling. I felt my stomach drop. Mark looked at me, his smile fading. "Everything okay?" he asked. I just shook my head and walked into the kitchen to answer it. "Hello." His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't sad. It was cold. Completely empty. It was the voice of a man who had already made up his mind. "I know where you are," he said. It wasn't a question. My heart hammered in my chest. "What are you talking about?" I asked, but my voice was weak. The lie died before it even left my lips. "Don't," he said. "Just don't. I've been on the computer. Our computer." And then I knew. A few weeks ago, my phone had been acting up, and I downloaded my WhatsApp archive to my Gmail so I could read it on the desktop. It was such a stupid, careless thing to do. I'd forgotten all about it. He must have found it. He must have read everything. He started listing things off like a lawyer in a courtroom. The messages. All of them. The ones where you tell him you love him. The ones where you talk about me. He paused, and I could hear him take a sharp breath. "I saw your location history. I know all the times you lied. I even saw the email receipt for the watch you bought him for Christmas. The one you told me was for your dad." There was nothing to say. There were no excuses. The little lies and the big ones had all tangled together into this one giant, ugly truth. He had all the evidence he needed. He had his story, and it was a simple one. I was the villain. "I know," I whispered. It was all I could say. "You know," he repeated, his voice cracking just a little. "That's it. After 6 years, all you have to say is, 'I know.'" I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him that he'd pushed me to this, that his perfect, suffocating love had left me no air to breathe. I wanted to tell him about the nights I cried myself to sleep because I was so crushingly lonely right next to him. But what was the point? He wasn't listening. He was just confirming what he already believed. My words would just be more gaslighting to him. My pain would just be an excuse. "It's over," he said, his voice flat again. "I'm done. I don't ever want to see you again. When you get back, your things will be packed." He hung up. I stood there in Mark's kitchen phone in my hand, staring at the wall. The silence was deafening. The cheesy Christmas movie was still playing in the other room. Mark came in and saw my face. He didn't have to ask what happened. He just put his arms around me, but I felt a million miles away. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. I didn't want to blow up my life. I just wanted to feel like a real person again. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. I went to my sister's house, the place I should have gone in the first place. I spent Christmas Day on her couch, numb, while her kids opened their presents. The next day, I got a text from my next-door neighbor. "Are you okay? There are bags all over your front garden." My blood ran cold. He hadn't just packed my things, he'd thrown them out. I drove over my sister in the car with me for support. And there it was. My life. My clothes, my books, my photos, all stuffed into black garbage bags and piled up on the damp grass for the whole world to see. It was a final public performance. It was him showing everyone what a good wronged man he was and what a piece of trash I was. I just stood on the pavement and cried. It wasn't just about the affair anymore. This was pure cruelty. This was him trying to humiliate me into nothing. In the days that followed, I tried to talk to him. I sent texts. I sent emails. I wasn't begging for him to take me back. I knew that was over, and honestly, I didn't want it anymore. I just wanted him to face me. I wanted a real conversation, not a cold execution over the phone. I wanted him to yell at me, to get angry, to treat me like a person who had hurt him, not like a problem he had erased. I wanted him to understand just for a second that a marriage doesn't just break overnight. It cracks slowly under the weight of 1,000 tiny moments of loneliness and misunderstanding. I wanted him to know that the woman he married was still in there somewhere, buried under years of trying to be the perfect wife he demanded. He never replied. The silence was his final word. It allowed him to keep his perfect story intact. Now I see his post online. I see the comments praising his dignity and strength for cutting me out so cleanly. They don't see the man whose jealousy was a prison. They don't see the man whose love was conditional on me playing a role. They see the perfect husband who got cheated on by a horrible wife. And he's letting them? He's soaking it all in. I'm not going to pretend I'm innocent. I lied. I had an affair. I broke his heart, and I will have to live with that forever. But I am not the monster he has made me out to be. I am a woman who was suffocating and made a desperate, stupid, and selfish choice to be able to breathe again. He can have his story. He can have his internet supporters and their sympathy. He can be the perfect victim, just like he was the perfect husband. It's clear to me now that he always needed an audience more than he ever needed a wife.
Story 12.
I'm the girl who cheated. I know that's how he tells the story, and he's not wrong. It's the one fact that burns everything else to the ground. But it's not the whole story. It's just the ending he saw. The story I lived was something different. Before I met him, my life was like one of those perfect houses in a magazine. Everything was expensive, clean, and completely empty. There was no life in it. The people, the men I dated, they were all the same. They looked at me and saw my father's last name, the balance in my trust fund. They'd talk about mergers and acquisitions over dinner while I just pushed food around my plate, feeling invisible. My whole world was about appearances. Silent dinners where the clinking of silverware was the loudest sound. Grand gestures that meant nothing because they were just transactions. Love was something you bought, you proved you won. Then I met him. He worked at a small graphic design company my dad's firm hired for a tiny, unimportant project. He was wearing a faded band t-shirt and had paint under his fingernails. He didn't look at my purse to see if it was designer. He looked at my face when I talked. He laughed at my stupid jokes. He asked me about my dreams, not my portfolio. For the first time, someone actually saw times me times Vanessa, not the walking bank account. Our worlds should have never mixed. His life was loud and messy and real. He had roommates and late rent payments and friends who would drop everything to help you move a couch. My life was scheduled, sterile, and lonely. When I introduced him to my parents, my father shook his hand and then immediately asked him about his 5-year plan. He just smiled and said, "To be happy." My father didn't get it. I did. It was everything I ever wanted. For 5 years, we built a life together. We moved into a small apartment that he filled with warmth and laughter. Our friends merged his rowdy, loyal group and my polished, polite ones. It felt like a miracle. I was living in this beautiful dream, a normal life. And it terrified me every single day. I felt like an imposter, a spoiled girl playing dress-up. I kept waiting for him to wake up and realize I wasn't good enough, that I was just pretending to be this down-to-earth person when deep down I was one of them, one of the hollow people I ran away from. The better things got, the louder the voice in my head became. He'd look at me with so much love, so much trust, and the voice would whisper times, "You're going to break it. You don't deserve this. You're going to ruin him." Asterisk. Loving him felt like a 5-year-long panic attack. I was so afraid of losing the one real thing in my life that my fears started to poison it. I'd pick fights over nothing just to see if he'd leave. He never did. He was patient and kind, which only made me feel worse. It made me feel like an even bigger fraud. The night it happened is a sick blur. I was out with some of my old friends from college. They were all talking about their lives, which sounded like checklists. Engagement, wedding house, in the suburbs, kids. It was the exact life I'd run from, but they made it sound so certain, so secure. All I could think about was the gnawing uncertainty inside me. All I could hear was that voice screaming, "Times, he's going to leave you. You're not what he thinks you are. It's only a matter of time." Asterisk. I drank too much champagne, trying to make the voice shut up. It didn't work. It just made me feel more disconnected, like I was watching my life from outside my own body. A guy started talking to me at the bar. He was a carbon copy of every man I'd ever dated before: slick hair, expensive watch, an easy, meaningless smile. He said all the empty things I was used to hearing. It wasn't exciting. It wasn't a temptation. It was familiar. It felt like slipping back into the role I knew how to play. The conversation meant nothing. He meant nothing. He was a ghost. But for a few minutes, talking to him felt like an escape from the crushing fear that I was about to lose everything I truly loved. It was a stupid, pathetic, and desperate act of self-destruction. It was me pressing the red button just to prove it was real. I was so convinced I was going to fail, so sure I was going to hurt him, that I did it myself first. It was the ultimate act of cowardice. I murdered my own happiness before anything else could. I woke up the next morning with a pit in my stomach so deep I thought I might actually be sick. The shame was a physical weight. He was in the kitchen making coffee, humming a song he liked. He smiled at me, and I felt like a monster. I swore to myself I would bury it. I would delete the memory, lock it away, and spend the rest of my life making it up to him being the person he deserved. It was a disgusting, selfish plan, but it was the only one I had. Then my phone buzzed on the nightstand. My heart stopped. It was a text from the guy from the bar. Something stupid. "Last night was fun. We should do it again." My blood ran cold. It wasn't a memory anymore. It was evidence. It was proof of the crime I had committed against the only person I had ever truly loved. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the screen. I had to delete it. I had to erase it before it could ruin everything. I just had to hit delete, and this nightmare would be over. I fumbled with the phone, my thumb hovering over the trash icon. Just as I was about to press it, he walked into the bedroom holding a mug of coffee for me. He saw the look on my face. The pure, unfiltered panic. "You okay?" he asked, his smile fading. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, my heart pounding in my ears. He put the mug down and walked toward me, his brow furrowed with concern. He glanced down at my hands, at the phone gripped so tight my knuckles were white. Before I could hide it, before I could do anything, he gently took it from me. He didn't read it right away. For a second, he just held the phone, looking from it to me, his face full of confusion. He trusted me. The idea that there could be something bad on there probably didn't even cross his mind. He was just trying to figure out why I looked so terrified. Then his eyes dropped to the screen. I watched his face as he read the words. It was like watching a statue crack. First, nothing. He just went completely vacant, his expression wiped clean. All the warmth, all the love I was used to seeing there just vanished. The air in the room got cold and thin. He put the phone down on the nightstand, very gently, like it was a bomb. He didn't look at me. He just turned and walked out of the bedroom. That silence was the loudest sound I've ever heard. It was 1,000 times worse than screaming. I followed him into the living room, a pathetic weight escaping my lips. He was just standing by the window, looking out at the street, his back to me. "Who is he?" he asked. His voice was flat. "Dead." It meant nothing. I choked out the words, feeling like poison. It was a mistake. One stupid mistake. He finally turned around, and the look on his face broke me. It wasn't anger yet. It was something much deeper. It was a kind of disbelief, like I had just told him the sky was green. He looked at me like he'd never seen me before. "A mistake," he repeated, his voice quiet. "You made a choice, Vanessa. This was a choice." And then the yelling started. It wasn't just him, it was me. I was sobbing, begging, trying to explain the mess in my head, the fear, the self-sabotage, the voice that told me I was going to ruin everything. But it all just sounded like excuses. Pathetic, selfish excuses. He wasn't hearing my reasons. He was just hearing the truth. I had shattered his trust. I had taken the one pure good thing in my life and destroyed it for no reason at all. Our fight wasn't a performance for the neighbors, though I'm sure they heard every word. It was the sound of my soul literally tearing itself in two. The good part that loved him and the broken part that had just killed him. He said it was over. He said he couldn't even look at me. Then he walked back into the bedroom, packed a bag, and left. I collapsed on the floor, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. I thought that was the worst it could get. I was wrong. The next day I went to my parents' house, just desperate for somewhere to go. When I came back to the apartment that evening, it was half empty. His clothes were gone. His books were gone. The stupid, ugly painting he loved was gone from the wall. He had taken his entire life out of ours while I wasn't there. He had erased himself. That's when I made my choice. He chose to leave, and I chose to fight. In the world I grew up in, you don't just let things go, you fix them. You prove your worth. If something is broken, you throw money and effort at it until it's whole again. I thought his silence was a test. He was hurting, and he needed to see how much I loved him. He needed proof. So I started sending the gifts. First it was flowers to his office. A huge bouquet with a card that just said, "I'm sorry. I love you." Then I sent a first edition copy of his favorite book to his new place. I had to get the address from one of his friends. I wrote letters, pages and pages of them, pouring out everything I couldn't say during our fight. I explained the fear, my feelings of not being good enough, how my love for him was so big it scared me into doing the dumbest thing in the world. He never responded. The silence continued. So I tried harder. I thought he needs to see times me. He needs to know I won't just disappear, that I won't give up. I knew his routine. I knew which coffee shop he went to in the morning, which bar he and his friends went to on Fridays. I'd go with my friends and we'd just happen to be there. I'd try to catch his eye just to give him a small, sad smile to show him I was still here, still fighting for us. He would just turn and walk away. I wasn't stalking him. In my messed up head, I was making a grand gesture. I was trying to scream, "I love you," across the canyon of silence he had built between us. I asked my friends to talk to him, to tell him how devastated I was, to tell him that he was my whole world. They did, but it only made things worse. He told them to tell me to stop. But I couldn't. Giving up felt like admitting that he was right, that I didn't love him enough. Persistence was how I had been taught to show devotion. You don't take no for an answer. You wear them down with the sheer force of your love. I see now how crazy that sounds, but at the time it was the only logic I understood. I thought his anger was a wall I just had to be strong enough to break down. The final blow didn't come from him. It came from my mother. She called me one afternoon. Her tone was serious, the same one she used when a business deal went south. "Vanessa," she said, no warmth in her voice. "I spoke with his mother. You need to stop." My blood ran cold. "What? Why?" "You're hurting him," she said, and the words hit me like a physical slap. "This isn't helping. You're scaring him. All these things you're doing. The letters, the showing up. It's not love. It's harassment. You have to leave him alone. It's over." Hearing it from her, the woman who taught me that the solution to any problem was to be relentless, to take what you want, to never show weakness, it broke through all my delusions. She was the one who always told me to fight, and now she was telling me to surrender. I hung up the phone and just sat there in silence. And for the first time I saw myself through his eyes. The gifts weren't romantic. They were intrusions. The letters weren't apologies. They were demands for attention. My presence wasn't a reminder of my love. It was a threat. My grand gestures weren't a testament to my devotion. They were deeply, profoundly selfish. I wasn't the heartbroken girl fighting for the love of her life. I was the monster under his bed. I was the villain in his story. I finally understood. The silence he wanted wasn't a test for me to pass. It was his new reality. A reality he needed to build to protect himself from me. And I wasn't in it. I was never going to be in it again.